Hey guys, tonight we begin in the flickering darkness before sunrise, where the Nile mists are still curled like sleepy cats along the riverbank. You're already awake, of course, you always are. Out in the workers' quarter behind the palace, your small reed mat is still warm, but you're on your feet, fingers already checking the edge of your obsidian blade. The day hasn't started, but your duties have. Welcome to the life of the Pharaoh's barber. There's a certain peace to this hour, isn't there? While most of Egypt still snores under linen wraps, you're kneeling before a shallow basin, splashing water onto your face that smells faintly of copper. The sky's a deep indigo soup, and somewhere out there, a temple priest is already striking a drum. Boom, boom, waking up the gods, or maybe just scaring off the rats. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first task, make sure you haven't died in your sleep. No, really. That little pinch you give your arm each morning is less about habit, more about, well, the high stakes of your profession. You work with blades on royal skin, with no margin for error. Yesterday, the butcher's apprentice sliced too deep into a boar and now scrubs latrines. You nick the Pharaoh's chin. Let's just say the Nile's got a lot of hungry fish, but you're alive, awake, and mostly clean, so you open the old reed chest where your tools lie, an obsidian razor that glows like black fire in the lamplight, a whetstone from a desert quarry, linen cloths as smooth as temple marble, and a tiny copper mirror that always makes you look 10 years older. Maybe it's the angle or the stress. Next, you prepare the oils. Sweet almond for softening, blue lotus for scent, and castor oil, good for shine but smells vaguely like goat regret. You warm the little clay jar by the brazier, mixing it slowly. The scent rises up, thick, dreamy, a little too strong if you're not careful. You learned that the hard way when the Pharaoh once sneezed mid-shave. You nearly trimmed his left nostril permanently. You wrap the tools in fresh linen, tuck your satchel under your arm, and head out. The city is still slumbering as you walk through narrow mud brick alleys. Dogs yawn in doorways. A fisherwoman is already mending nets by lamplight, her eyes hollow and kind. She nods as you pass. People know who you are. Not by name. Barbers rarely get that honor, but by presence. They recognize the quiet confidence, the steady hands, and that lingering smell of crushed lotus and sharp copper. You reach the palace compound just as the first hint of light cracks open the eastern sky. Guards, half awake and leaning on spears, grunt in greeting. You nod, no words, not yet. The palace has its own rhythm, and you're part of it, like a carefully oiled gear in a massive golden clock. Inside, the air shifts, cooler, perfumed. Columns loom like petrified tree trunks, their painted lotus crowns hidden in the dark. You pad across polished limestone, feet silent, until you reach the servants' corridor. Here, others are stirring too, scribes, cooks, sandal-bearers. You all move with the hush of those who serve someone terrifyingly awake and always watching. You duck into the preparation room, set your tools on a low cedar bench, and light the incense. Frankincense this morning, calming, necessary. The Pharaoh didn't sleep well last night, at least according to the body servant, who's now massaging his feet and mouthing good luck at you from across the room. The Pharaoh, you see, is not just a man. He's a living god, but unfortunately, even gods wake up with bedhead and eye crust. When you enter the royal chamber, you bow low, knees on marble, forehead to floor. You wait for the soft grunt that means you may rise. It comes, and you approach the bed where the divine being sits groggily, his ceremonial beard askew, and eyes still half dreaming of pyramids, or war, or pomegranates. Who knows, you kneel, the tools are arranged before you. This is the moment. You dip your fingers into the warm oil, rubbing it between your palms until it glistens. You smooth it over the Pharaoh's cheeks, jawline, and upper lip. His skin is dark, weathered, and dotted with scars from battles both political and literal. The oil catches the light. He doesn't speak, but watches you through half-lidded eyes. Then comes the razor. You whisper a prayer, not to any god in particular, but to steady hands and unblocked nostrils. You angle the obsidian blade just so, drawing it gently along the jawline. The scrape is clean, perfect. You exhale slowly, continuing. One cheek, then the other, the chin, the upper lip. This one always makes you sweat because the Pharaoh tends to twitch when he thinks of taxes. Historians still argue whether royal grooming was a purely cosmetic affair or a form of magical protection, a ritual that kept chaos at bay through perfect symmetry. You don't argue, you just shave. Halfway through, you notice something odd. The Pharaoh's not humming today. Usually he hums a soft, off-key tune that might be a lullaby or a death chant, depending on how awake he is. Today, silence. You risk a glance. His eyes are open, watching you with a strange intensity. You nod once, continue shaving. Best not to ask. As you finish, you take a clean linen cloth, dab his face, and offer a bowl of scented water for rinsing. He doesn't take it. Instead, he raises one hand, elegant, long-fingered, calloused from weapons and ceremony, and flicks it slightly. Dismissal. You bow again, deeper this time, and back away, keeping your gaze low. The moment you're out of the chamber, your heart starts thudding again. That was tense. Maybe it's just another unpredictable royal morning, or maybe something's brewing. In the hallway, you pass a priest who gives you a quick nod and a sniff. You nod back and sniff discreetly. He reeks of cedar resin and temple wine. Someone's been prepping for a funeral or a scandal. You head back to the servants' court and sit on a low bench in the corner. Your hands are still, your tools are clean. And somewhere behind thick walls, the Pharaoh is admiring his own chin. You survived another morning. You're barely seated when a boy barrels toward you with a scroll tucked awkwardly under his arm and a wild look in his eyes. He's maybe 12, barefoot, breathless, and wearing the palace livery that's always 2 sizes too large for messengers. He skids to a halt beside you, hands you the scroll, and pants, "Inventory check. They're asking about your blades." Your heart skips a beat. Inventory? That means either someone stole something, or someone's trying to pin something on someone. You untie the reed twine and unfurl the list. Yep, there it is. Obsidian razors, fishbone combs, copper scissors, incense spoons, and a note scribbled in red ink. Last blade not returned. Confirm status. You roll your eyes, it's not missing. You buried it, because in your line of work, razors don't get reused indefinitely. After about 20 shaves, especially those involving gods or semi-gods, the blades are retired in a ceremonial hole behind the perfumery. They're tools of both grooming and spiritual cleansing. Once they've served royalty, they're too sacred or contaminated to touch common skin again. Historians still argue whether this practice was ritualistic sanitation or just bureaucratic paranoia. Either way, you play along. You write a quick response in coal ink, explaining the blade was decommissioned, blessed, and properly entombed, per protocol, and you send the boy dashing off with it. Now back to your bag. You've got 5 razors left, 3 sharp enough for a pharaoh, 1 chipped, and 1 that probably couldn't cut through papyrus. Time to prep the backups. You pull out your whetstone and begin grinding the first blade in slow, deliberate strokes. The sound is soft and gritty like a cricket singing through sand. The blade flattens, gleams. It's satisfying, like trimming a long toenail before it snags on the bedsheet. You grin. Little pleasures. Behind you, the palace begins to hum. Doors open, sandals slap across polished floors, servants shout across courtyards in that weird whisper yell that's supposed to be respectful. Somewhere, a musician plucks an off-key string. Life returns. You finish sharpening and move on to cleaning your combs. They're not just tools, they're status symbols. Each is carved from bone or ivory, and you've customized them over the years. One has a tiny falcon etched into the handle. Another smells faintly of cinnamon oil, thanks to a spill you never bothered to clean because, frankly, it smells amazing. You also carry a jar of depilation paste. It's made from resin, crushed ants, and goose fat. Smells exactly as good as it sounds. You rarely use it on the Pharaoh. It's more for the royal wives, concubines, and one very self-conscious high priest who insists on being as smooth as polished basalt. Oh, and the tweezers. Tiny bronze things shaped like scorpion tails. You use them for eyebrows, nose hairs, and once, horrifyingly, for removing a tick from a courtier's navel. You still have nightmares. Just as you're mentally preparing to forget that tick incident again, another figure approaches, Meket, the palace steward. He walks like he owns the place, which, given his control over all domestic affairs, he sort of does. Meket's face is permanently squinty, like he's always smelling something slightly spoiled. He eyes your satchel. "Barber, the Queen requests your services." You raise an eyebrow. "Now?" She wants her temples cleaned before the midday offering, and her hair oiled, and her feet filed. Ah, one of those mornings. You pack up again. By now the sun has risen fully, flooding the palace in golden shadow. You follow Meket through corridors lined with paintings of crocodile gods and sky boats. You pass a line of scribes arguing about the correct number of offerings for the corn goddess. You nod to a eunuch carrying a tray of figs who winks at you. That's unsettling. The Queen's chambers are cooler, quieter. Drapes flutter in the breeze like silent flags of luxury. You enter after being announced with an overly dramatic "The hand of the Pharaoh's face approaches." That's apparently your title now. You'll take it. The Queen reclines on a cedar couch, wrapped in a gown so sheer it might as well be a thought. She sips tamarind water and regards you with bored interest. You kneel, unpack your tools again, and begin. Her hair is a wig, of course, goat hair dyed black and styled into elaborate curls that defy gravity. You remove it gently and begin massaging her scalp with almond oil. Her skin smells like myrrh and mild disdain. She sighs contentedly. "You're gentler than the last one," she murmurs. "Last one?" you ask, curious. She smiles without warmth. "He poked me with a comb. He scrubs the bathhouse walls now." Noted. You clean her temples, rub her feet with pumice stone, and file her nails with a flake of obsidian. She dozes off somewhere in the middle of it, which is ideal. A sleeping royal is a non-demanding royal. As you work, you glance at her wrist, a bracelet made of lapis lazuli and gold. Not new, you've seen it before, but now you notice a new charm on it, a tiny razor. Interesting. A subtle nod to you, or maybe just a symbol of discipline or danger, or both. You don't ask. By the time you finish, she's stirring again. You place her wig back on, adjust the curls, and hand her a mirror. She nods once. Acceptable. High praise. You retreat backwards out of the chamber just in time to avoid a tray of honey cakes that a clumsy servant nearly drops in your path. You catch one mid-air and slip it into your satchel. Perks of the job. Back in your corner of the servants' courtyard you sit again. Finally, you nibble the honey cake. It's soft, spiced, and worth every royal glare you endured this morning. And just as your shoulders start to relax, a trumpet sounds from the outer gate. A procession is arriving. You squint toward the entrance. Soldiers, priests, with a baboon. And, oh no, is that General Kamudi? He's back from Nubia, which means you'll be summoned to clean the sand out of his scalp, oil his beard, and, gods help you, lance the boil he always insists is part of his battle aura. You sigh, finish the last bite of honey cake, and reach for your fishbone comb. Another long day begins. General Kamudi arrives in full, dusty glory, swaggering into the palace courtyard like he's just conquered the sun itself. His bronze breastplate clinks with every exaggerated step, and his beard, if you can call it that, looks like it's been combed with a broom and dunked in tar. You resist the urge to mutter something impolite under your breath, and instead rise, dust the crumbs off your linen, and prepare to meet the human sandstorm. "You," he bellows, spotting you before you can pretend to be someone else. "I need my face deduned." Yes, he said, deduned, as in, remove the dunes, from his face. You gather your satchel and follow him into one of the side rooms reserved for grooming visiting nobles. It's barely ventilated and smells like stale onions and military arrogance. You'd light incense, but General Kamudi once said it tickles his nose hairs into rebellion. He slumps into a stone chair, legs akimbo, clearly expecting you to perform miracles. You look at the scalp first. Yep, coated in a fine crust of desert grit. Sand grains embedded like tiny beetle eggs. You've seen cleaner mummies. You pour warm water slowly over his scalp, letting it run down the back of his neck. He sighs, eyes fluttering half-closed. That's the stuff, he murmurs, like you're not elbow-deep in the battlefields of his hairline. You start with the fishbone comb, teasing out knots, one strand at a time. It's thankless work. He twitches every time you tug a little too hard. Easy, he barks. That's command hair. Yes, General, you reply, as serenely as you can, while resisting the urge to make the next tug just a bit firmer. Then comes the oiling. You use the castor blend. It helps with flaking, though nothing short of divine intervention will fix the crust forming behind his ears. You dab on a bit of crushed lotus to mask the funk of 3-day helmet sweat. He grunts his approval. As you move on to his beard, you remember the boil. General, you say gently, about the noble bump beneath your jaw. It's grown stronger, he interrupts, like a loyal soldier. See for yourself. You don't want to, you really don't, but duty is duty. You examine the inflamed spot, which is now roughly the size of a scarab beetle and glowing faintly pink. You wince. Historians still argue, you mutter under your breath, whether Kamudi's boil led an entire battalion into battle or just scared off a few flies. You reach for a sterilized copper needle, heat it briefly over the brazier, and brace yourself. The pop is surprisingly gentle. The general lets out a long ah, like someone discovering pillows for the first time. You clean the area, dab it with honey salt paste, and apply a cloth bandage. You, he says, sitting taller, are a magician of the face. You bow slightly. Only with noble ingredients, General. He chuckles, stands, adjusts his armor with great drama, and claps you on the shoulder. You've earned my protection, Barber. If anyone gives you trouble, you send them to me. Considering he is usually the trouble, that's not terribly reassuring. He leaves in a storm of cape swirls and sand flakes. You're left in the quiet aftermath, scrubbing your hands furiously and wondering if boils have hierarchies in the afterlife. You step out into the courtyard again, just in time to see your apprentice waving at you frantically from across the way. Ah, yes, the apprentice. His name is Hapu, and he's new, eager, terrible with razors, always sweating. He's holding a small clay pot in one hand and hopping from foot to foot like a man who desperately needs to pee but is too polite to excuse himself. You stroll over. Hapu, trouble? He nods quickly. I was heating the oil like you said, and then I dropped the jar, but not on the floor, on the cat. You blink. The palace cat? He nods again, faster this time. The white one, the sacred one, with the eyeliner and attitude. You close your eyes. So now, Hapu continues in a whisper, she smells like goat butter and keeps licking herself with a look of betrayal. You can't help it. You laugh. A full belly laugh. The first in days. Well, you say finally, let's hope the goddess Basti enjoys a good foot balm. You send Hapu off to clean the poor cat and return to organizing your satchel for the afternoon shift. You've still got a few hours before the priests begin their evening rituals, which means nobles will come trickling in for last-minute grooming before sunset ceremonies. A scribe appears with a message. Vizier Renzi requests eyebrow shaping. Of course he does. Renzi's brows are legendary, not for beauty, oh no, for ambition. Each is shaped like a hawk in mid-flight, and he insists they be angled exactly 13 degrees upward. You roll up your sleeves. Renzi greets you from behind a curtain, reclining on a chaise and sipping something purple. His robe is embroidered with symbols you suspect he doesn't fully understand. He motions you over with 2 fingers. You pluck carefully, 1 hair at a time. Renzi hums with every tug. "I heard," he murmurs, "that the Queen requested you today." You nod, focused on a particularly stubborn brow hair. "She's been generous lately to those who please her." You nod again, not your business. "Some say she favors her barber more than her husband." Your hand pauses mid-pluck. "That," you say calmly, "would be both flattering and extremely unwise." Renzi smiles. "Good answer. Wise, very wise." You finish the shaping, brush away the stray hairs, and hand him a mirror. He admires himself with a satisfied smirk. "Perfect," he says, "like a divine hawk." "Or an angry vulture," you mutter under your breath. He doesn't hear you. By the time the sun begins to dip below the palace walls, you've cleaned a dozen scalps, trimmed 4 noble beards, massaged sandal sores, rethreaded temple guards' moustaches, and reapplied enough coal to sink a barge. You're exhausted. Your hands smell like oils and blood-orange resin. But you did it. Again. You find a quiet bench behind the perfumery, the one near the little burial pit where the used razors go. You sit, watching the sky turn from gold to rose to deep indigo. A bat flutters overhead. Somewhere nearby, the sacred cat licks herself disdainfully. And you? You exhale. Not quite a priest, not quite a servant, but something important, something essential. Tomorrow you'll wake again before the Pharaoh, but tonight you rest. You wake before dawn again. Of course you do, that's the job. But this morning, it's not the usual weight of obligation that rouses you. It's the smell. Burning resin, heavy, bitter, sacred. You sit up abruptly on your reed mat. The scent doesn't come from the palace incense. No, this is temple-grade myrrh, the kind burned when priests perform serious rituals or when something important has died. You throw on your linen robe, grab your satchel, and head out. The palace is too quiet. Even the dogs aren't barking. You pass the kitchen courtyard and see 3 cooks just standing, holding trays, eyes wide, not speaking. Something's happened. You find Hapu, your apprentice, curled up behind a pillar, clutching his sandals like a comfort animal. "What happened?" you whisper. He looks up, eyes red. "The royal architect, dead. They found him slumped over the Nile map room, still holding his compass." You blink. The architect? He was young, favoured by the Pharaoh, and apparently healthy. You trimmed his sideburns 2 days ago. He joked about hiding a pyramid under his wig. Said it made him feel taller. "What are people saying?" you ask, already guessing the answer. "Poison," Hapu whispers. "Or a curse." Of course. When someone important dies, it's never just bad clams. Historians still argue whether sudden deaths in the palace were caused by politics, parasites, or superstitions turned deadly. Either way, your job today just got more delicate. Because when someone high-ranking dies, grooming doesn't stop. It changes. Now it's about preparation, presentation, symbolism, and this time, it's personal. You like the architect, he always tipped in carob bark. You make your way toward the preparation room, already imagining the task ahead. You've done this before, not often, but enough. Cleaning the dead is different from grooming the living. The stakes are lower, in one sense, but higher too. Because how a body appears at death determines how it's remembered in eternity. They've laid him out on a low stone bench. His skin is already pale, waxy, and tinged with blue. His eyes are open, glassy. You close them gently with your fingertips, murmuring a brief prayer under your breath. You unwrap your tools. No razors today, not yet. Just cloth, oil, and gentle pressure. You begin by washing his face. The water is scented with lotus and cedar. You avoid his lips, they look too still, too final. Then the scalp, you massage oil into his hair, which is matted and stiff. It takes effort to work it loose, but you do, because he would have wanted it perfect. He once told you his hairline held the structural balance of the empire. You smile softly at the memory. As you work, you notice something odd. Scratches on his fingertips. Deep, almost like he'd clawed at something. You glance around. No one else seems to care. But your barber's eye notices everything. And suddenly, the silence of the palace seems heavier. You finish the preparation, wrap his head in ceremonial linen, and leave the room quietly. Outside, a line of priests chant low hymns. One of them meets your eye, a younger acolyte with ink-stained hands. He nods once, solemnly. There's a weight to that nod. You nod back. Back in the servants' quarters, Hapu is anxiously combing a linen wig for a minor noble who's more worried about a bald patch than the death echoing through the palace. You take over without a word and let your hands do the talking. This noble, a man named Sabni, sighs dramatically as you oil his scalp. So tragic, the architect's death. He was so symmetrical. You resist the urge to grind the comb a little too hard into Sabni's skull. And now, Sabni continues, there's talk of omens. Bad luck. Some say he dreamed of a cracked obelisk before he died. You nod absently. Dreams. Omens. This is how panic spreads, through half-truths over hairlines. You finish his grooming, smile politely, and send him on his way with a dab of lemon oil behind the ears. Nobles love smelling like fruit. You pull Hapu aside. Don't repeat the dream story, you whisper, or anything about his fingers. Hapu nods quickly. Of course. I didn't see anything. I never see anything. I can't even read. That actually makes you feel better. Later, as the sun climbs and palace life resumes its artificial calm, you find yourself summoned, again, to the Pharaoh's chamber. This time it's not for shaving, it's for consultation. You're brought before him in his private garden, where he sits on a low bench under a fig tree, plucking the fruit but not eating it. He's dressed simply. No headdress, no beard, just linen and silence. You kneel. He says nothing for a long while. Then, you saw the body? Yes, Divine One. You cleaned it? Yes. He plucks another fig, doesn't look at you. Was he frightened? You choose your words carefully. He seemed surprised. The Pharaoh nods as if that confirms something. Another pause. Then, if I die in my sleep, Barber. Your throat tightens. Don't make me look like that fat merchant you prepped last harvest. His mouth was... He makes a fish face, open like a market cart. You can't help it. You snort. Then realize what you've done. You freeze, eyes down, breath held. Then a soft chuckle. The Pharaoh is laughing. You let yourself breathe again. I trust you, he says, simply. That's why I don't cut your tongue out for snorting. Deeply honored, Divine One. You leave his garden with your heart pounding like a temple drum. That wasn't a threat. It was something scarier. It was affection. By evening, you return to your bench. The moon rises above the palace walls. Somewhere the sacred cat sings a mournful song to no one in particular. Hapu falls asleep in a pile of folded linens. And you sit in silence, thinking of the architect, the scratches on his fingers, and the fig that the Pharaoh never ate. The next morning begins like a sigh, soft, reluctant, and still carrying the scent of myrrh from yesterday's rites. But the palace doesn't pause for grief, no matter how many architects fall over their compasses. Life, especially royal life, requires constant maintenance. And beards. You stir just before dawn, your back aching slightly from sleeping too long against a wall instead of your mat. Hapu is sprawled beside the perfumery like a dropped laundry bundle. You nudge him gently with your foot. Up, there are more chins to shine. He groans something about owls and nightmares and maybe soup. You don't ask. You freshen up quickly, splashing your face from the courtyard basin, rubbing your teeth with salt and charcoal, and check your satchel. Razors? Sharp. Tweezers? Aligned. Oil? Down to a third. You'll need to visit the perfumer's apprentice today. the one with the mole shaped like an ibis. You step into the servant corridors just as the first sunbeam spills over the horizon. It hits the palace wall like golden paint. A few guards are rotating shifts, yawning behind their spears. A priest mutters a chant while rearranging lotus flowers in a bowl. You nod to the baker's boy delivering rolls, so fresh they're still singing. Then comes the knock. It's not at your door, it's behind you, deep in the stone hallway leading to the high priest's private chamber. A low, rhythmic knock. Unusual. You glance around. No one else seems to hear it, or maybe they're ignoring it. That's never a good sign. You follow the sound, curiosity overriding caution. At the end of the corridor, a narrow door stands slightly ajar. You peek in, and there, sitting on a stool carved with the face of a ram-headed god, is the high priest of Amun himself, completely bald, absolutely furious. "My eyebrows," he says, as if this alone is explanation enough. You hesitate. "They're gone?" He nods stiffly. "Shaved in my sleep, some form of treason or comedy." You try not to laugh, you fail a little. He narrows his eyes. "You find this amusing, Barber?" You clear your throat, compose yourself. "Only in the tragic sense, holiness." He gestures to the bench beside him. "Fix it." You blink. "Fix the absence?" "Yes." "Ah, a spiritual emergency in follicular form." You open your satchel, fish out a pot of coal, a stub of charcoal, and a tiny brush made from ibis feathers. This isn't grooming anymore, it's art. You begin sketching soft, regal arches just above where his brows once ruled. He closes his eyes. They should look stern, but merciful, like they've just passed judgment, but also offered tea. You nod solemnly. "Of course." As you work, you wonder who would dare prank a high priest. It could have been a rival, a lover, or someone who mistook his linen wrap for a napkin at dinner. Either way, you won't ask. Some truths are best left under wigs and whispers. Once the brows are re-established, he examines himself in the copper mirror. He hums. "I look wise," you nod, radiantly so. He dismisses you with a lazy wave. As you exit, you notice something new. On the wall outside his chamber, a thin line of crushed blue pigment. It trails down the corridor like the residue of someone who carried makeup in a hurry. You file it away in your mental scroll. Another breadcrumb in this increasingly strange week. Back in your corner of the courtyard, Hapu is finally upright and rubbing his eyes. "Why do priests always smell like wine and mystery?" he asks, scratching his neck. You don't answer. Instead, you point to the satchel. "Inventory, we're running low." Together, you head to the perfumer's alcove, tucked behind the granary. It's a quiet place, lined with tiny jars and drying herbs. The apprentice greets you with a distracted smile. He's stirring something viscous and orange that smells like cinnamon and regret. "I need castor," you say. "And more blue lotus, the real stuff, not that watered-down papyrus juice you gave me last time." He scowls but fetches the jars. You watch him carefully. He always tries to short you. Today, though, he's quiet, almost nervous. "Did you hear?" he whispers, handing over the jars. "About the scroll found in the architect's sleeve?" Your eyebrows rise. "No." He leans in. "They say it wasn't plans, it was a list of names." You blink. "Names?" He nods once. "No one knows who's on it. The vizier ordered it burned." "Of course he did. You leave with your oils and a heavier mind. That afternoon you're called to tend to a lesser royal cousin, a teenager with a chin so faint it's practically imaginary. But he insists on a strong grooming presence. He's convinced that shaping his peach fuzz into a pointy beard will win him favor with the Pharaoh. You try. You really do. But in the end, you paint on the illusion of stubble using crushed nut husk and hope he doesn't sweat it off at dinner. As you're packing up, he says, "You were close to the architect, right?" You pause. Close enough to know his left ear twitched when he lied. The cousin laughs. "Then you'd want to know what the vizier said about him, that he was, asking questions." About what? Patterns, shadows, people who meet in the herb garden after the moon rises. You nod slowly. How poetic. That night, as you sit on your usual bench beneath the acacia tree, you realize something important. Your work has made you invisible. You are present in every sacred space, every secret chamber, every royal breath, but they forget you when you leave. You are the quiet behind, the glamour, the silence beneath the ceremony, and that makes you dangerous, because you see everything. You lie down on your mat that night, not just tired, but aware. The palace is changing. People are whispering more, smiling less. And the air is thick, not just with perfume and politics, but with warning. You close your eyes, and the scent of blue lotus carries you into a sleep that feels more like holding your breath. You dream of razors. Not the usual kind, sharp and obedient in your hand, but enormous ones, bronze blades the size of temple doors, floating above the palace, slicing clouds in half. Below them, nobles scramble like ants, their wigs flying off in all directions. The Pharaoh is laughing, or crying. It's hard to tell. You wake to the sound of sandals slapping against stone. Hapu. He's panicking again. You sit up, groggy. What now? He leans down, whispering urgently. The statue in the east courtyard. The one of the Pharaoh's grandfather. Someone shaved its beard. You blink. What? He nods, wide-eyed. Not chipped, not broken, shaved. It's smooth, like it was done with your kind of blade. You're on your feet instantly. Defacing a royal statue is more than vandalism, it's a spiritual insult. The beard isn't decoration, it's symbolic of divine authority. Shaving it is like slapping a god in the face with a sandal. You race across the courtyard with Hapu trailing behind like a confused duckling. The air is already warm and thick with murmurs. Servants, guards, and a few scribes are standing around the statue, whispering like they're trying to summon ghosts. And there it is. The stone visage of the Pharaoh's grandfather, wise and serene as always, but now beardless. The place where the ceremonial chin wig should be is polished to a smooth, mocking blankness. It's not vandalism, it's surgical. Your stomach sinks, you kneel to inspect it. Someone used obsidian, you'd bet your best razor on it. There's a signature to the cut, fine, clean, almost loving. Whoever did this wasn't just trying to deface a monument, they were sending a message. You glance around. No one's looking at you exactly, but they're all not looking at you very deliberately. You step back. Where's the vizier? You ask. Hapu whispers. He's summoned the priesthood and the stonemasons. They're talking reconstruction and curses. Of course, this is going to explode. You retreat from the scene, mind buzzing. Someone's playing a dangerous game and using your tools to do it. Back in your workroom, you examine your razor inventory. One is missing, not buried, not chipped, not in Hapu's mess pile, just gone. You stare at the empty slot and then panic because you remember something from the day before, the high priest's missing eyebrows. They were gone when he woke, shaved, and now the statue, both done with a level of skill you recognize as your own. You sit down hard. Someone's copying your work. Or worse, someone stole your tools. You press your palms into your eyes. No, you're careful, always. You count your razors obsessively. You bless them, wrap them, lock them. Except you flash back to a moment 3 nights ago. You were distracted, tired. After tending to the Queen's wig oiling ceremony, which involved far too much perfume and awkward small talk, you'd fallen asleep next to the toolkit. It had been open. Anyone could have. You stand up. Someone's framing you. You pace the courtyard, thinking, who would benefit from your fall? A rival? A jealous apprentice? No. Hapu can barely tie his sandals without whimpering. Someone higher. Someone who sees you. You remember the vizier's comment about the Queen, his suspicious smirk, his sudden interest in your interactions. Could he be trying to link you to palace sabotage, you, the barber? But that's the trick, isn't it? You're not just the barber. You're in every chamber, every conversation. You touch the heads of the powerful. You hear the offhand jokes, the whispered threats, the regrets muttered under breath during shaves. You're the perfect scapegoat. You glance at the tools again. You need a plan. That evening, as the sun begins its descent, painting the palace walls in peach and fire, you make your way to the chamber of the Queen. You're not on schedule. She isn't expecting you. The guards give you odd looks, but let you in. Your reputation opens doors. The Queen is brushing her own hair, seated before a copper mirror, humming a tune that sounds like something children sing in the alleys. She doesn't turn as you enter. "I didn't summon you," she says, voice cool. "I know." A pause. "Then why are you here?" You step closer, careful. You keep your voice low. "Someone is using my tools." That makes her turn. Her eyes meet yours in the mirror, dark, calculating, alive. "Explain." You do, quietly. You describe the missing razor, the statue, the shaved priest. You mention the rumors, the list the architect supposedly carried. You mention the scratches on his fingers, the burned scroll. The vizier's sudden interest in your every move. The Queen listens. She says nothing. Then she picks up a small silver ring from the table. It's shaped like a cat. She twirls it once on her finger. "You think this is a game of politics," she says, "but it's older than that. It's faith, it's succession, it's legacy. The Pharaoh grows old. He coughs at night. He stares too long at the horizon." She stands, walks slowly toward you. Men fear change. They kill for continuity. But some of us, we prepare. She stops inches from you. "Find the razor. Find who used it. Bring it to me." Your heart is racing. "And if I don't?" She smiles barely. "Then don't come back." You leave her chamber, knowing 3 things. 1, this goes deeper than stolen tools. 2, you're already tangled in it. And 3, the Queen is not afraid of blood. That night, under a slice of moon and the whisper of distant flutes, you dig out a blade you haven't touched in years. A curved obsidian hook, sharper than grief. You light a single oil lamp, sharpen it slow, and whisper to the silence around you. Let's find out who wants to shave a kingdom bald. You begin with the guards. Not the ones who stand tall at the main gates or parade around in feathered helmets. No, you start with the ones who do the boring work. Corridor assignments, nighttime shifts, quiet little posts where nothing should happen. These are the guards who notice things they're underpaid, overworked, and deeply underappreciated, which means they gossip like pigeons with wine. You slip into the servants' mess during the pre-dawn lull, carrying a jar of fig paste and a loaf of soft bread you stole, borrowed, from the noble's dining chamber. You place it on the table without a word. Within minutes, you've got 3 guards leaning in, pretending to argue about spear maintenance, while casually dropping clues like olive pits. "Course someone was down the east corridor 2 nights ago," says one, chewing with his mouth open. "I heard sandals. Didn't see a face, but they weren't limping like old men up. Too quick. Had a scent too," adds another. "Not sweat. Something sweet, like myrrh and honey." You raise an eyebrow. "Perfume?" The 3rd guard nods slowly. "I've smelled it before. Queen's handmaiden uses it. The tall one, with the nose. You know exactly who they mean. Tani. She's not just a handmaiden. She's the Queen's eyes and ears." Whispers follow her like incense smoke. No one's sure where she sleeps or what her real job is. But one thing's certain. She never sweats, and she always knows where the Pharaoh is. You thank the guards with a nod and leave them to their chewing. The trail leads you next to the storage annex behind the Queen's bathing chamber. It's a maze of folded linens, sealed perfume jars, and half-carved wig stands. You slip in through the servants' entrance and follow the scent, faint, floral, sharp. And then you see it. Tucked behind a basket of goat hair wigs, a tiny strip of linen, blood-stained, razor-sized. Your heart hammers. You kneel, carefully part the folds. And there it is, your missing blade, still gleaming, still perfect, wrapped not in your cloth but in a sliver of royal blue, fabric reserved for senior court members. Someone high-ranking used this, someone who had access not only to your tools but to your routine. You pick it up delicately like a viper's fang. Then behind you a voice, "You shouldn't be in here." You freeze. Tani stands in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Her expression is calm. Her voice is not. "People disappear for less," she says. You hold up the blade. "Then someone must have really wanted me gone." A long silence stretches between you. The only sound is the drip of water from a leaking clay pipe nearby. Then Tani says quietly, "Come with me." She doesn't wait for an answer, just turns and walks, silk robes whispering behind her. You follow. She leads you not to the queen, as you expect, but into the underbelly of the palace, through a locked side door, down a narrow staircase, past storage rooms so ancient they smell like forgotten time. Finally, she stops before a wooden panel carved with the symbol of Ma'at, balance. She knocks twice, sharply. A whisper answers. "Speak!" "Truth," she replies. The panel swings inward. Inside is a chamber you've never seen. Round, lit by a single lamp. 5 people stand in a loose circle, 4 seated, 1 pacing. You recognize none of them by name, but every face is familiar. A physician, a temple scribe, a senior weaver, and, unexpectedly, the captain of the palace guards. Tani gestures for you to enter. You do. The pacing man stops. He has soft hands and eyes that don't blink enough. "You're the barber." You nod. He smiles faintly. Then you understand how delicate things can be. "What is this?" you ask, your voice low. Tani answers. "A balancing act." The physician adds, "We are watching the center shift." The captain grunts. "The vizier is gathering power faster than we expected. He's consolidating the priesthood, shifting guard schedules, replacing scribes." The weaver says nothing but holds up a strip of papyrus. A list. At the top, you spot the architect's name. Then the high priest. Then yours. You feel your stomach turn. The pacing man steps forward. Someone is trying to remove those who touch the Pharaoh's body, mind, image, anyone who helps him present strength. You whisper, "Because the Pharaoh is growing weak." They don't answer. They don't need to. The queen, clearly, has her own network. But even her reach has limits. These people, this little circle, they're the edges of the net. Quiet, invisible, effective. And now you're in it. The pacing man holds out his hand. You give him the razor. He weighs it thoughtfully. Too clean? Whoever used this knew how to leave no trail, but they weren't trained. "How do you know?" you ask. He hands it back. Too much pressure on the edge. The grain is slightly off-center. You'd never make that mistake. You nod, slightly dizzy. Tani speaks again. "You're not just being watched, Barber. You're being tested. Someone's checking to see how loyal you are. How quiet?" You ask, "What happens if I fail?" No one answers. Eventually, the pacing man says, "Stay close to the queen, but not too close. Watch the vizier. Watch who carries blades." Tani escorts you back out, stopping in the shadowed stairwell. She leans close. "The architect trusted you. That's why they marked your name next." You feel the weight of that sentence settle deep in your chest. Back in the courtyard, morning has broken fully. The sun blazes across the stone like a blade of fire. You find Hapu, who's polishing a bronze mirror with an expression of deep confusion. He looks up. "Where were you?" You smile faintly. "Somewhere dusty." He nods as if this makes perfect sense. You unpack your tools, sharpen your blades, mix your oils. Routine is safety. Repetition is survival. But your mind buzzes. Someone shaved that statue for a reason. Someone is testing the limits of loyalty and silence. And someone wants to leave you hairless, headless, and forgotten in a shallow ditch behind the embalmer's tent. Well, they'll have to try harder. Because you're not just a barber. You're the man who touches the Pharaoh's throat with a blade every morning, and no one ever thinks to watch the hand that shaves the king. It's surprising how quickly normal returns. The palace has a talent for smoothing over cracks with ritual and incense. The statue's defaced chin, already fitted with a golden prosthetic beard, the high priest's missing brows, redrawn daily by an artist so nervous he faints at the word symmetry, and the death of the architect, quietly absorbed into the walls as if they'd planned for it all along. But you're not forgetting. Every shaved head now feels like a message. Every whisper between guards sounds like a test. And every appointment a possible trap. This morning you're summoned earlier than usual, before even the sacred geese have started honking. The Pharaoh requests his shave. You hesitate. Since the architect's death, His Majesty hasn't asked for much beyond fruit bowls and silence. You'd assumed the Queen had told him to rest, or that the Vizier had stepped in with one of his whispered wellness regimens, which mostly involve opium and humming. But now he's calling for you. You enter the royal chamber, as always, with a bow so deep it makes your knees pop. The air smells different today. Heavier. Not the usual mix of sweet resin and lemon balm. There's a new note. Something metallic. You glance around. No priests, no guards, just the Pharaoh, seated, eyes sharper than they've been in weeks. You, he says softly. Barber. You rise slowly. Yes, Divine One. He gestures to the bench. Today you shave me in silence. No flattery, no humming, no chit-chat. You nod once. Of course. You unfold your tools with practiced precision, even as your mind races. The room is unusually still. No servants moving in the background. No bird song from the window, just your own breath and the scrape of linen on obsidian. You oil his face gently. He closes his eyes. Careful, he says. My skin's thinner these days. You nod again. I'll be gentle. You begin the shave, and you notice for the first time in years a tremor in your hand. Not fear, not yet, but something close, a kind of edge awareness. Because right now, one wrong move could mean your own end. And yet one right move, just the tiniest slice here at the neck, could change history. Historians still argue whether royal barbers were ever recruited as assassins. The line between service and sabotage, they say, is a single slip of the blade. You keep your hand steady. The Pharaoh exhales. You've been with me a long time, haven't you? Yes, Divine One. Seen much. Yes. Spoken little. Yes. He opens one eye, gazes at you. Why? You pause. Think carefully. Because my words aren't as sharp as my blades. He laughs, a short, dry chuckle. Clever, but true. You return to the shave. The blade glides smoothly across his cheek. Do you believe, he says suddenly, that a man can be shaved into someone new? You don't look up. I believe presentation is power. He hums, satisfied. And do you believe I am still a god? Now that is the question no one dares answer. Not the Queen, not the Vizier, not even the priests who now chant louder during ceremonies as if trying to shout away mortality. You respond the only way you can. I believe you are whatever you choose to appear as. He nods slowly and lets you finish in silence. When it's done, he looks in the mirror, tilts his chin, runs a finger across the smooth jaw. Perfect, he murmurs. You're dismissed. As you pack your tools, he adds, watch the Vizier. You stop, mid-fold. Divine One, I said, watch him. He's grown too smooth. You bow, a little lower than usual. Yes, Majesty. You leave the chamber, heart racing. He knows something. Back in the servants' courtyard, Hapu is scrubbing oil jars with an expression of profound confusion. You pull him aside. I need a favor, you whisper. He looks panicked already. Does it involve snakes? I hate snakes. No snakes, just shadows. You hand him a folded cloth with a single fishbone comb inside. It's not for grooming, it's a signal. You give it to an old contact in the wigmaker's quarter. He'll understand. Hapu runs off, muttering about snakes anyway. You spend the rest of the morning pretending everything is normal. You shave 2 scribes, thread the eyebrows of a priestess with a crush on you, she always accidentally touches your wrist, and trim the nose hairs of a merchant who insists he's royalty because his donkey once drank from the Pharaoh's fountain, but your mind is elsewhere. That afternoon, word spreads fast. The vizier is hosting a feast. That alone is suspicious. He doesn't feast, he accumulates. The invitation, however, includes you, and not as a guest, as the official groomer of the event. That's not unusual on paper. Your presence at royal functions is often requested for touch-ups, oiling, and last-minute de-sweating. But you've never been listed by name before. And the wording? The royal barber is to attend and remain available in proximity to all principal guests. Too specific, too exposed. That evening the palace is transformed. Torches flicker along the walls. Musicians tune their lyres nervously. Servants scurry with trays of roasted duck and spiced melon. The queen arrives first, veiled and unreadable. Then nobles, scribes, even minor priests. And finally, the vizier. He enters like a man who's already won. Cloak flowing, eyes scanning. He sees you, smiles. "Barber," he says, raising his cup. "So glad you could join us." You bow deeply. "I'm always happy to clean up messes, my lord." He grins. "Let's hope there's no need." He walks past. And for the first time since this strange game began, you feel it. Something final is coming. A climax. A cut. You just don't know who will hold the blade. You spend the feast exactly where they want you, visible, quiet, and seemingly harmless. A few guests request oil dabs for shiny foreheads. One noble asks for a beard fluff mid-date. He's trying to impress a temple singer with eyes like papyrus ink. You oblige them all with gentle hands and a polite smile, but inside you're counting exits. The vizier is seated at the head of the second table, not next to the pharaoh, but near enough to matter. He's surrounded by advisors and minor royals, each leaning in like plants toward the sun. Laughs too often, eats too little, drinks from a cup that no one else touches. Classic signs. He's orchestrating something. The queen, veiled as always, reclines across from him. Her kohl is thicker than usual, her rings louder. She speaks to no one but Tani, who stands at her side like a silent blade. Every now and then the queen glances your way. Just once, she nods. The signal is subtle. Go ahead, so you move, not toward the queen, not toward the vizier, but toward the back of the room, where lesser officials huddle near the wine jars, gossiping like cats. You recognize a scribe there, Penhu, big ears, talks too much, a talent for remembering things he shouldn't. You refill his wine, lean in. "Busy night," you murmur. He grins. "Busy minds?" You wait. He winks. You didn't hear this from me, but the vizier's been meeting secretly with the temple guards, promised one a house on the river if he manages a transition. He makes little air quotes with his greasy fingers. You nod slowly. Transition? Sounds structural. He sips his wine, or removal. You leave him with his cup and his delusions of secrecy. So that's it. The vizier is preparing to remove the pharaoh, whether through poison, coup, or mysterious illness, you don't know yet, but you're certain now you're not just in the crossfire, you're on the list. As you step outside to refresh your oils, you spot Hapu lingering behind a decorative palm, looking like a very sweaty statue. He darts over. "Your contact gave me this," he whispers, handing you a folded scrap of papyrus. It reads, "Statue not first, high priest not accident, temple ledger falsified, vizier feeding names." We watch. Queen waits. No signature, just a single symbol at the bottom. A razor carved into a sun, the same mark burned into the bottom of your old toolkit, a mark you haven't seen in years. You look up sharply. "Did anyone see you deliver this?" Hapu shakes his head. "I was stealthy." Define stealthy. "I knocked over a tray of grapes and screamed a little, but then I—" You stop him with a sigh. "Never mind." The message is clear. The queen has allies inside the temple, a hidden faction, and now they're giving you breadcrumbs. You tuck the note into your robe. Back inside, the music swells. Dancers twirl. The vizier raises a toast. To continuity, he says, "and to the health of our divine ruler." Some raise cups, some just exchange glances. You remain silent. Then a shift. The vizier gestures to a priest who steps forward holding a small gilded box. "The Pharaoh, in his wisdom," the vizier declares, "has requested a public blessing from the Temple of Renewal." That's not a thing, you feel a chill. The priest opens the box. Inside, a ceremonial razor. Obsidian, perfectly clean. "Tonight," the vizier says, "we shave away the sickness of the past. We begin fresh, pure, divine." And suddenly, you are being called forward. You. "Barber," the vizier purrs, "would you do us the honor?" Every eye turns. The queen does not move. You step forward, slowly, pulse pounding in your ears. The priest hands you the blade. It's familiar. Too familiar, because it's yours, the missing one, polished, rewrapped, used. You glance at the vizier. He smiles. This is a test, or a trap, or both. You look to the queen. She's watching you through her veil, motionless. You inhale slowly and approach the dais where a sculpted head of the Pharaoh, a model, not the man himself, is mounted on a marble pedestal. They want you to symbolically cleanse it, a ritual for the crowd, a show. You kneel, unwrap the razor, and very, very deliberately you nick the cheek of the statue. Not a slash, not an insult. Precise, shallow cut. Blood-red pigment blossoms from the nick. Planted there earlier, no doubt. Gasps ripple through the hall. You rise, bow, and hand the blade, carefully, to the queen. She takes it, raises it, and slices clean through a lock of her own veil. The room goes silent. Then she says evenly, "We all carry razors now." She drops the veil fragment, walks out, just like that. The feast ends moments later. No one eats dessert. That night you sit alone by the sacred oil jars, thinking. The queen made her move, a quiet defiance, a warning. And you? You proved you're not just watching. You're willing to act. From this point on, your hands aren't just sacred. They're lethal. You don't sleep that night. Not out of fear, though that would be fair, but because your mind is too loud. Every heartbeat feels like a drum echoing in the corridor of your skull. You pace. You polish your blades. You rewrap your oils 3 times. At some point, Hapu stirs in the corner of the room and mutters, "Are we being haunted again?" before rolling over and snoring with the enthusiasm of a warhorse. You envy his ignorance. By dawn, the air smells different. Not just the usual combination of Nile silt, bread ovens, and overworked perfume, but something sharper, like the moment before a storm. You head toward the royal bath chambers, not because you were summoned, but because you want to be seen. Visibility is protection now. If you act like a man with nothing to hide, people hesitate to accuse you. On the way, you pass Tani. She's leaning against a pillar, arms crossed, wearing an expression that says she knows exactly how many lies are floating through the palace at this moment. "You did well last night," she says without preamble. You keep walking, slow and steady. Wasn't exactly subtle. "Subtleties for scribes and spiders," she replies. "The queen likes bold." You stop, turn to her. "What happens now?" She glances around, then steps closer. "The vizier will move soon. He'll either try to isolate the Pharaoh or accelerate his decline." You frown. "Oh, poison?" She nods. "Oh, manipulation, sleep rituals, confusion spells, whispers of incompetence. Can the queen stop him?" "She is stopping him," Tani says. "You're part of that?" You shake your head. "I'm a barber." "No," she says. "You're the Pharaoh's reflection." You don't know how to respond to that. So you leave her with a nod and step into the humid air of the bath chamber, where the day's first task awaits, a minor priest with an overgrown beard and an underwhelming understanding of personal space. He insists on debating philosophy as you trim around his lips. "Do you think," he says mid-snort, "that hair is a sign of chaos?" You raise an eyebrow. "Or control?" He declares, as if that means something. As you finish the final snip, another priest enters, a junior acolyte carrying a folded linen with crimson embroidery. You recognize it as a temple token. He hands it to you, says nothing, leaves. Inside the fold is a strip of parchment with 3 words written in sharp, practiced hand. They will drug him. You stare at the note, no names, no context. But there's no doubt who him is, the Pharaoh. You press the note into your satchel and leave the bath chamber quickly, nodding to no one. You need answers. You find Hapu in the preparation courtyard, attempting to create a new beard wax from candle drippings and pomegranate juice. The smell is ambitious. Hapu, you say? Do you remember where the temple cooks sleep? He looks up, blinking. The ones who chant while they boil things? Yes. The ones who handle the ritual meals. Oh, sure. Behind the incense room, by the herb wall. Smells like onion regrets. You're already walking away. The temple kitchens are tucked into a shadowed bend of the palace, protected by carved falcon heads and the persistent belief that no one ever questions priests in aprons. You slip inside under the pretense of delivering beard oil for ritual purity. A half-truth, really. The head cook, a hunched man with the permanent expression of someone who has smelled too much cumin, greets you without interest. But the assistant? She's the key. A young woman named Becca, known for her sharp eyes and her sharper gossip. You catch her as she's preparing the trays for the Pharaoh's midday meal. New blend? You ask, nodding at a reddish paste. She glances up. Saffron, mixed with date and poppy resin. Your jaw tightens. Poppy? She shrugs. Instructions from above, supposed to calm the spirit. You meet her eyes. How much? Her fingers still. Enough to still a spirit, not calm one. You lower your voice. Why are you telling me this? Because you tip better than the vizier, she replies before slipping you a vial. It's the test sample, barely a thimble of reddish cream but heavy with implication. You leave quickly. Your next move isn't to the queen, not yet. Instead, you head for the statue garden. No one visits in the heat of midday. It's too quiet, too open, which is exactly why it's perfect. You sit on the bench beneath the statue of the crocodile god, Sobek. Pretend to clean your tweezers, and wait. Tani appears. Of course she does. You hand her the vial. Poppy resin, meant for the midday meal. She pockets it. We'll swap it before it's served. He won't know. The vizier won't know. Then what? You ask. She studies you. You keep doing what you're doing. Watch, listen, be ready. For what? Her gaze sharpens. For the moment the blade moves. She leaves without another word. You sit there long after she's gone, staring at your reflection in the blade of your favorite razor. You think about what she said. You think about what the Pharaoh said, and you realize something. You don't just groom the image of a god. You protect it. You return to your quarters and find Hapu trying to brush a wig with a chicken feather. Busy day? He asks. You smile faintly. Busy as soon. That night you lie awake again, but this time your mind is still. You know where you stand now. You're not just the barber. You're the last hand between the blade and the throat. The next morning brings a peculiar kind of stillness. Not the peaceful, soft sand stillness you normally enjoy in the quiet hours before sunrise. No, this stillness feels staged, arranged, like a temple dance just before the drums begin, or the hush before someone lies. You wake before your bones want to. Hapu is already stirring, muttering something about dreaming of onions with feet. You ignore him and instead check your toolkit again. Everything's where it should be. Every blade nestled in linen, every comb clean. Oils aligned by viscosity. Not because you expect to use all of them today, but because people are watching. You need to look like a man with nothing to hide. You're summoned early to the Pharaoh's chambers again. Not unusual, after yesterday's near-ritual performance, but this time, when you arrive, the room is already full, not of servants, of scent. Thick clouds of frankincense drift from 3 incense bowls. The air is heavy, pungent, oddly sweet. You try not to cough. You bow low. Divine One, the Pharaoh is seated upright, but his eyes are clouded, not just with age or sleep, but something foggier. He turns his head slowly. Barber? Yes, Majesty? He blinks. What day is it? You pause. The 5th day of Horemheb's cycle. Ah, he says softly. And have the crows returned? You blink again. He waves a hand. Never mind. You move closer. Gently place your hand beneath his chin to begin the shave. His skin is warmer than usual, slightly flushed. You recognize the symptoms. He's been drugged. Not enough his mind. Blur the edges. Muffle the divine voice that once crackled behind his eyes. Your hand stills. Divine One, you say softly, may I fetch fresh water before I begin? The air is thick today. He doesn't respond, just nods, barely. You bow again, lower, slower, stalling, thinking. The water bowl on the side table has a faint shimmer, not from purity, from oil. There's something slick floating across the top, like the ghost of a poisoner's fingerprint. Poppy, lotus extract. Either way, it's not for clarity, it's for clouding. You step to the side, pretend to reach for the bowl, and instead pull the vial from your satchel, the swapped sample from the kitchen. You dip your cloth into your mixture, harmless water and lemon peel, a scent he knows. You return to the Pharaoh and begin to wipe his brow gently, careful not to press too hard. His gaze drifts. Barber, he murmurs, do you think statues remember? You blink. Remember what, Divine One? He smiles faintly. Their shape, before the wind. It's not just rambling. Somewhere in there, something is trying to speak through the fog. You begin to shave him slowly, every movement precise. Your razor glides over skin like a boat, skimming calm water. You work in silence, using the rhythm of the strokes to assess how deeply the drug has taken hold. It's not as bad as you feared. He's drowsy, yes, but still tethered to himself. A rope might be fraying, but it hasn't snapped. Behind you, the chamber curtain rustles. The vizier enters without announcement. Of course. He walks slowly, hands clasped, eyes sharp as a lion in shade. Good morning, Majesty, he says with honeyed venom. You look peaceful. The Pharaoh does not respond. The vizier turns to you. Such skilled hands, he murmurs. You know, I often wonder how close you come each morning to accident. You meet his gaze. Closer than anyone. The vizier's smile tightens. Indeed. He steps closer to the bed. Too close. Shall I read something aloud? He asks the Pharaoh, though it's clearly for your benefit. Something inspirational. About legacy, perhaps? The Pharaoh blinks slowly. Doesn't respond. The vizier pulls a scroll from his sleeve and unrolls it, holding it up like a priest about to summon judgment. You see the symbol stamped at the top, Ma'at's feather crossed with an ankh, a declaration. He begins to read. To ensure the continued divine order and to protect the realm from decline, it is proposed that... But then the Pharaoh lifts a finger, just one. The vizier pauses. The Pharaoh clears his throat. His voice, when it comes, is hoarse but steady. I am not proposed, I am. The vizier freezes. You almost drop your razor. The Pharaoh, slowly, very deliberately, shifts his eyes to you, then back to the vizier. Leave us. Silence. The vizier stands still for a long moment, then smiles, too wide, too calm. As you wish, Majesty. He bows, backs out slowly, scroll still unfurled in his hand. You wait until the curtain stops rustling. Then you set your razor down. The Pharaoh exhales. Not yet, he murmurs. You look at him. Majesty? I'm not finished. You nod. No, Divine One, you're not. He closes his eyes again. They think I'm slipping. They're wrong. They may not be someday. You hesitate. But not today. He reaches up, places a hand over yours. His skin is dry, cool now. I trust you, Barber. That lands heavy. Because it's not flattery, it's a burden. You clean your blade carefully and pack your kit. As you do, the Pharaoh speaks again. Tell the Queen, I remember the statue. You nod, understanding. You leave his chamber, feeling as though your ribs are too tight. The queen is not in her solar, not in the garden. You finally find her in the shrine of Hathor, kneeling before a painted relief of the goddess with the cow's ears and the soft, watching eyes. Tani is nearby, sharpening a small blade on a whetstone with long, slow strokes that feel more ceremonial than practical. You kneel beside the queen, silent for a moment. Then, he remembered. She doesn't look at you, but you feel her posture shift. "Then we still have time," she says. You hand her the vial. They tried again, this morning. She accepts it without comment, but you can feel the energy between you shift from tense to something colder, calculating. "He asked for you," she says. "I was already there." She nods once. "Then he's safe. For now." You rise, so does she. The queen steps forward, eyes fixed on the mural of Hathor. They will not stop. The vizier wants the throne. The priests want control. The guards want certainty. And they all think a sick pharaoh is a throne with legs. You murmur, "Then we take away the chair." She looks at you. Her expression is unreadable, but her voice softens. "You've done more than I asked, risked more than you were trained for. I shave, I listen, I survive." She steps close, places a small object in your palm, a seal, gold, shaped like a razor, the queen's crest etched at the base. "Keep this with you," she says. "If things go wrong, you'll need it." You pocket it without a word. She nods to Tani. "It's time." Tani stops sharpening. "Tonight?" The queen says. "No, tomorrow, during the offering to Ra." She looks at you one last time. "We bring the blade into the light." You nod, and for the first time in weeks, maybe years, you feel the exact weight of what you are. Not just the royal barber, not just the man with a blade, but the last line between the crown and the knife pressed to its throat. You spend that night in silence, perched on the edge of your sleeping mat like a cat listening for thunder. The queen's words echo in your head. Tomorrow, during the offering to Ra. That gives you, what, less than a full cycle of the sun. One meal, one shift, one moonrise to prepare for something as vague as it is colossal. You sharpen your razors one final time. You line your tools as though they're witnesses in a trial. You sleep for 27 minutes, maybe. Long enough to dream of red-tinted water and the sound of clapping that turns into the snapping of necks. When you wake, Hapu is already up, miraculously, and fussing with a pile of linen wraps. His fingers are trembling, and you notice he's laid your tools out exactly as you taught him, but backward. "Hapu," you say gently, "breathe." He exhales hard. "I had a dream. The pharaoh was a statue, and I couldn't find his beard." You nod. "Mine turned into a goat that sang the vizier's name." He looks horrified. You smile faintly. Humor is a blade, too. You send Hapu to fetch more oil from the perfumer, not for use, but to give you space. The palace is shifting. You can feel it in the way the guards change their postures when you pass. Less formal, more alert. The usual palace rhythm, flowing, musical, is now a slow clatter, like someone drumming too carefully on cracked clay. At mid-morning, you're summoned, not to the pharaoh, but to the queen. She meets you in her private shrine. No Tani this time, no veil, no wine tray, just her, seated on a low stool, combing out her own hair with deliberate strokes. "Everything is in motion," she says without turning. "Are you ready?" You nod. "What will happen during the offering?" "We'll draw the vizier forward, let him speak, let him accuse. The priests will listen, the guards will hesitate, and then—" She turns to you, eyes fierce. "We make the truth louder than his lies." "And if he doesn't speak?" you ask. She smiles. "He will. He's been rehearsing his betrayal for weeks. He'll want the applause." You pause. "What's my role?" You stand behind the pharaoh, razor in hand, as always. "Visible." "Visible," she echoes, "but harmless," you add, "until you're not." You leave the queen's shrine and feel something like peace. Not calm, not safety, just clarity. You know who you are. You know what you're here for. At midday, Hapu returns, puffing from the heat, holding 2 small jars of oil and a piece of stale bread. He's proud of himself. You give him the day off, he protests. But I can help. You can, you say gently, by staying far away from wherever the knives will fly. He pales, but obeys. Late afternoon arrives like a curtain being drawn. You bathe, you oil your hands, you trim your own beard, just the edges. You choose your tools carefully, 1 obsidian blade, 1 copper trimming hook, and a simple linen cloth. You don't pack any extras. You're not going to work today, you're going to witness. The offering to Ra takes place in the upper court, beneath an open roof. Just as the sun begins to dip westward. The court fills quickly. Priests in gold-threaded robes chant in low tones. Guards line the walls in double formation. Nobles whisper behind jeweled fans. The queen enters first, regal and silent, flanked by 2 attendants in plain linen. Tani is among them, then the Pharaoh. He walks slowly, but under his own power. His beard is shaped, his face freshly oiled. You did that this morning, without speaking a word, and he had smiled once when you rinsed the razor. He knows. You walk 3 paces behind him now, tools in your satchel, eyes watching everything. The vizier arrives last. He wears a ceremonial robe of deep indigo with a gold sash, so wide it looks like armor. He walks like a man who expects thunder. A scribe hands him a scroll. Another follows with a small sealed box. You already know what's inside poppy-blessed oil, meant for anointing, meant for silencing. The ceremony begins. A high priest reads the sacred invocation to Ra. Dancers move in slow circles. Incense pours into the air like ghosts leaving a mouth. And then the vizier steps forward. He raises his hands. My brothers, my sisters, loyal servants of the throne. His voice carries. He's rehearsed. He turns, gestures toward the Pharaoh. We stand today beneath the great light of Ra, who shows us all things, and under that light we must be truthful, for Ra sees even shadows. A murmur. He turns again. Our beloved ruler, may he live forever, has grown weary, his mind clouded, his decisions slow. He pauses, gauging the room. You scan the faces. Some nod, some do not. The queen remains still. The vizier continues, louder now. Even the loyal must consider the future. And when that loyalty is tested, he pulls the sealed box forward, opens it. We must offer comfort, even rest. And then he reaches for the Pharaoh. You step forward before you've even fully decided to. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough. The Pharaoh doesn't flinch. He stands tall. You stand beside him, razor in hand, unwrapped, gleaming. The vizier sees it. His mouth tightens. Barber, he says sharply, what are you doing? You smile, polite. I stand where I always stand. This is not a grooming ceremony, he hisses. No, you reply. It's a cleansing one. And then the queen speaks. Her voice cuts through the court like silk, through skin. The vizier brings poison, not protection. The crowd gasps. He brings silence, not peace. She points to the vial in the box. Let it be tested. Let the priests judge. All heads turn to the high priest, who steps forward hesitantly. He examines the vial, sniffs it. His eyes widen. This is no balm, he says. This would put even a lion to sleep. Perhaps forever. The silence is so complete, you hear the beads shift on the queen's sandals. The vizier panics. This is slander, a conspiracy, the barber. He is compromised. And just like that, the Pharaoh lifts his hand. Enough, the crowd stills. I may be old, he says, voice steady, but I am not blind. He turns to you and nods. You move slowly, carefully, and place your razor not at his throat, but into his open palm. He holds it up and speaks. I remember the statue. The words fall like a sword. I remember what it means to be whole, and what it means to be shaved away. He turns to the vizier. And I remember who you are. Guards move. The vizier shouts something unintelligible before he's restrained. The queen steps forward. The Pharaoh steps back. And you? You remain still. Blade handed over, hands empty, duty fulfilled. That night, back in your chamber, you finally breathe. Hapu is waiting. "You're not dead," he says, stunned. "Apparently not," you reply, sitting down. He beams. "Does this mean I can stop cleaning combs?" You shake your head. Never. Outside, the palace glows in the warm hush of twilight. And for the first time in a long time, the Pharaoh sleeps without incense, because the danger for now has passed, and the Barber is still standing, the palace exhaled. Not all at once. Palaces don't do anything that dramatic, but slowly, like a stone beast loosening its grip on something it had nearly swallowed. And in that soft, shifting moment after the vizier was led away, in iron and silence, something strange happened. People started saying your name, not the Barber, not him, not that man with the oils and the oddly calm expression. Your actual name, whispered first by a priest, then a steward, then a guard who clapped you too hard on the back and called you a blade-wielding demigod, which you really didn't appreciate because your shoulder popped weird. For the first time in your entire career, you were visible, and it was terrifying, because now, instead of blending into corners and listening in shadows, people were watching you, smiling, offering gifts. One noble even tried to give you a goat, which Hapu named Cuticle, and now insists is your spiritual animal. But despite the strange fame, you keep your movements quiet. You still trim, still mix oils, still sharpen by moonlight. The Queen told you once, visibility is power, but only when you can choose when to disappear. And for the next few days, that's what you do. You vanish a little, return to the rhythm of things, tending to the Pharaoh's beard, which you notice grows a bit slower now. He's tired, but not cloudy. He speaks less, but when he does, it's sharp and strange. Like this morning, when you offered to massage his temples, and he said, "Barber, do you ever wonder if a crown is just a fancy headache?" You didn't answer. Because yes, you do. The court is quieter these days. The vizier's absence is a hole no one wants to admit exists. A few officials try to fill it with louder prayers and longer speeches, but none carry the weight. You suspect the Queen is waiting, planning. This isn't over. It's only paused. One afternoon, you're summoned not to the Pharaoh, not to the Queen, but to the royal archives. You've only been inside once, years ago, when you were asked to oil the hands of a librarian who had developed a rash from scroll mildew. You recommended fig resin. He never thanked you. Now you're back, led by a scribe who walks like he's trying not to think too hard. He leaves you in a small, dim chamber, stacked high with reed baskets and clay tablets. Taini is already there, leaning over a desk. She doesn't look up when she speaks. "You're here because we have a problem." Your hands tighten slightly on your satchel. "Worse than a traitorous vizier?" She nods. "Same scale, different shape?" She gestures to the tablet in front of her. You lean in. It's a map, not of Egypt, but of the palace, not the ceremonial version either, the real layout, secret passages, guard rotation schedules, storage chambers, hidden alcoves. Your stomach turns. Where did this come from? Found in the vizier's private quarters, tucked inside a scroll labelled Offerings to the Nile. Cute. Who else knows this exists? Now, you, me, the Queen, one priest, and Cuticle apparently because Hapu's been blabbing. You sigh. I'll talk to him. You should. The goat bit a guard this morning. You shake your head. What does this map mean? It means someone else was planning to move. If the vizier's plot failed, and it did, then this was plan B. You stare at the markings. This wasn't just for assassination. No, Tani says. It's for replacement. She taps a spot on the map near the eastern wing. The Pharaoh's double. You blink. I thought that was a myth. Historians still argue whether pharaohs used ceremonial doubles for security or spiritual continuity. But I've seen him, once, years ago. Same face, slightly different voice, trained, hidden. You step back. You think the vizier was going to swap him in? Or someone else was. The Queen's still sorting the threads. Where is he now? Gone. Vanished the night the vizier fell. You exhale loudly. Tani finally looks up at you. We need you to keep listening. To what? To people getting too confident, too loud. The double is out there, and someone may be planning to bring him back in. You nod, slowly. Back in the courtyard, the sun sets hard, like a curtain crashing shut. You find Hapu brushing cuticle with a bundle of straw and humming what may be a hymn or a snack jingle. You sit beside him. You need to stop talking about the Queen's business, you say. He stops brushing. Did I? You give him a look. I might have, he concedes. Just to the fig vendor and the washerwoman. And a guy with really clean fingernails who said he liked goats. You stare at him. I'm sorry, he says. Should I disappear? Just keep the goat away from guards. He nods. You look up at the palace walls. Somewhere behind them, people are still plotting. Quietly, carefully. The Pharaoh's throne might be stable for now, but there are always others. Always doubles, always razors. You sit for a long time, sharpening yours in slow, even strokes. Just in case. The Queen calls for you just before sunrise. This is not typical. She prefers midday for meetings when the shadows fall in patterns she likes and the palace air carries a more agreeable scent of roasted barley. But not today. Today, she sends Tani with a single word, now. You arrive at her private garden, still damp with morning dew, and find her standing barefoot in the sand beside a fig tree. No veil, no attendants, not even Tani remains. She holds something small in her hand. When she turns, you see it's a comb. One of yours. You tilt your head. Did I miss a knot? She doesn't smile. This was found beneath a guard's cot last night. One of the men who escorted the vizier out. The one who wasn't supposed to come back. You take the comb, examine it. It's clean but worn. A barber's comb. One of your apprentice sets, the kind Hapu organizes and sometimes misplaces. This could have been planted, you say quietly. Or picked up by someone trying to smell like safety, the Queen says. Either way, I need your eyes open. You nod. She steps closer. There are whispers now about the Pharaoh's health, about whether the ceremony was real, whether he still makes decisions. You stay quiet. The Queen lowers her voice. They're saying there was no blade in your hand. You blink. There was, you reply. She raises an eyebrow. Was there? You pause. Think back. Yes, you'd carried the razor, wrapped in linen, unwrapped during the ceremony. Held it in your palm like a seal of truth. But did anyone see the blade? You remember the light, the angle, the way the sun hit your hand? It could have looked empty. It could have seemed symbolic. You shake your head. I was holding steel. The Queen nods. I know that, but appearances matter more than reality in this place. She walks to the edge of the garden, gazes out over the palace walls. There are men who believe power is something you seize, but power, true power, is about what people think they see. You follow her gaze. The city beyond is already stirring. Markets, temples, scribes hunched over scrolls they don't understand. You want me to prove the blade was real? You say. No, she replies. I want you to show them it still is. You're not sure what that means yet, but later that day you begin the process. First, you retrieve the ceremonial razor from the royal archive, where it's now kept locked in a cedar box. You polish it slowly, tracing the groove where your fingers held it during the offering. Second, you visit the high priest. He's skittish since the vizier's fall, jumping at shadows and using twice as much incense as necessary. But he agrees to include you in the next public ritual. He thinks it will soothe the optics. Third, you begin listening again, and that's when you hear it. From a perfumer's apprentice, Becca's cousin, who talks too much when drunk on fermented fig wine. They say the Pharaoh hasn't spoken since the ceremony. That's not true. You shaved him yesterday. He asked if falcons dream. You confront Becca. She shrugs. I told him not to spread it, but stories move faster than knives. And worse, another rumour. There's a man in the market, looks just like the Pharaoh. Same eyes, same walk. You don't breathe for a second. Where? She hesitates. Western District? Past the lime pit? Old fish shop. You go, alone. The market is loud and narrow, filled with the kind of smells that turn your stomach sideways. Boiled onion, old salt, animal breath. But you push through past the melon vendor, who tries to sell you divine cucumbers, past the potter, who insists his jugs are leak-proof, until they're not. And then, by the fish shop, you see him, or almost him. A man standing in the shade, speaking softly to a merchant. Clean-shaven. Dignified, the same build, the same profile, but not quite. You move closer, just enough to hear he's asking for dates, not for eating, for pressing into wax. You freeze, because that is not something a man in hiding would ask. That's something a man preparing a seal would need. You step forward. Excuse me, you say softly. Do you need something shaved? He turns. And it isn't the Pharaoh. The resemblance is close, uncanny even, but the eyes give him away. Too narrow, too sure. He looks at you, smiles faintly. I was wondering when you'd find me. You glance around. No guards, no queen, just two men in a market full of fish and rumour. You're the double, you say. He nods. Was, not anymore, retired. You're not acting very retired. He shrugs. Old habits, and there are requests, unofficial ones. Someone wants me to return, quietly, permanently. You step closer. Who? He shakes his head. Does it matter? The point is, if the real Pharaoh falters, I'm next in line. Not for the crown, just for the image. He taps his temple. People trust what they see. You study him. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the barber, he says, simply. And eventually someone will ask you to shave me. He turns and walks away. You don't follow. That night you tell the queen everything. She listens, silent. Then, let him wander. Why? She lifts a lamp and holds it to her face, the shadows flickering across her cheekbones like war paint. Because sometimes the idea of a replacement is more useful than the reality. You don't sleep. You sharpen your blades again. All of them. Because if a new face is coming, you're going to make sure the skin beneath it knows exactly how sharp the old hand still is. The next morning, the Nile fog is thick enough to bite. It clings to the palace like old gossip, unwelcome but impossible to remove. The guards patrol more slowly, squinting. Temple bells echo more than usual. You can't tell if the sound is real or just what your brain does when the air is heavy and your sleep has been thin. You sharpened your blades until midnight. Then you stared at the ceiling. Then you got up and sharpened again. You haven't spoken to Hapu yet today. You're not ready for goat talk or dreams about onions. You need to think. You need silence. Instead, what you get is a summons. Not from the queen, not from the Pharaoh, from a noble you barely recognize. Lord Mahu, cousin to a high priest, owner of an enormous garden and wearer of tunics too embroidered to be taken seriously. You're called to his estate just after dawn. Normally, nobles request your services for very specific, very fussy reasons. Make me look 10 years younger, shape my moustache like a falcon's wing, oil my ears so they gleam under torchlight. That kind of thing. But when you arrive at Mahu's home, he's not lounging, he's pacing. His garden is empty. No servants, no musicians, no lazy relatives sipping beer under fig trees. Just him, walking in tight circles like someone trying to count his own regrets. You bow, cautiously. My lord. He waves you forward. You're the barber. I am. Good. I need to be shaved. Completely. You blink. Head? Beard? He shakes his head. All of it. Arms, legs, chest, eyebrows, everything. That is not standard. You pause. Planning to become a monk, my lord? No. He snaps, then more quietly. Something's coming, and I don't want to be recognized. Ah, there it is. You follow him into a small stone room with a single water basin. He disrobes without embarrassment, just fear. Skin pale, eyes twitching. You lay out your blades, not the usual gentle set, the full kit. As you begin to work, starting at his scalp, he starts talking, not to you, just out loud, like his thoughts are trying to leak out through the steam. They think it's over just because the vizier is gone. They're fools, it's never over. The queen's winning, but that doesn't mean she's won. The gods don't like unfinished stories. The priests know this. The soldiers know it. And the doubles? You pause. The what, my lord? He closes his mouth. Too late. You continue the shave, but more carefully now. Your ears sharpen. He mumbles again. He'll be at the temple, watching, waiting for a signal. When the sun hits the obelisk, you gently scrape his temple. Which temple? He freezes, then shakes his head. It doesn't matter. I've said too much. You don't answer, but you remember everything. You finish the shaving. He looks in the mirror and flinches his own reflection. Like a new man, he mutters. You pack your tools, leave quietly. You don't go back to the palace. Not yet. You go to the Temple of Ra. It's the tallest structure in this part of the city, its obelisk reaching like a spear stabbed into the sky. You've shaved the priests there before, especially during festival season, when even gods apparently expect their servants to sparkle. You walk the perimeter slowly, then you see him. Across the courtyard, wearing a simple robe, head bowed, holding a small clay jar, the double, again. You approach, casually. He doesn't flinch, just speaks without turning. I thought you might follow him. You stop a few feet away. You knew? He's one of mine. Yours? People like me don't just hide. We watch. You're silent. The double turns to face you fully. His expression is calm, neutral, but his eyes are flickering with something alive. They'll want to use me, he says. Soon they'll say the Pharaoh is too weak. They'll say I'm his divine twin, returned by prophecy. They'll say a lot of things. You nod slowly. Will you go along with it? He smiles. Depends who asks. That lands hard. Because you realize he's not afraid. He's waiting, testing the wind, preparing to become either a puppet or a god. And he's watching you. He knows that if anyone would recognize him mid-ceremony, it's the man who's seen every pore on the Pharaoh's face. He knows your blade could name the real from the echo. You step closer. You shave like a mirror, you say. But mirrors can lie, he shrugs. Then maybe I'll be a very convincing lie. And just like that, he walks away. Back at the palace, Hapu is waiting with cuticle in tow and a look of wide-eyed alarm. You missed everything, he says. What happened? The queen called a meeting, a secret one, with the general, and the priest who always smells like raisins. They were all whispering, and then someone said your name. Your jaw tightens. What did they say? Hapu pauses. They said if you die, no one can tell. You blink. Tell what? I don't know, he wails. They were whispering, and I was under a table, and Cuticle sneezed. You pinch the bridge of your nose. The palace is unraveling again. The vizier is gone, but his ghost lingers. The queen is playing a long game. The double is ready to step forward. And you? You're holding the only tool that can cut through it all. You don't sleep that night. You polish your razors again. Because soon, someone's going to ask you to shave the face of a man who claims to be king. And this time, you're not sure whose side you'll be on. The next morning begins with a whisper. Not a summons, not a trumpet blast, not a servant sprinting through the courtyard like their sandals are on fire. Just a whisper carried on wind and rumour. There's been a vision. You hear it from a water carrier, then a perfumer, then a priest who coughs every other word and smells like lavender with deep trust issues. The Pharaoh had a dream, and not the usual ones, falcons in flight, figs that grow into women, crocodiles playing board games with the moon. No, this dream was different. He saw the sun split in two, one scribe murmurs as you walk past. Twins of light, says a merchant to no one in particular. And only one cast a shadow, adds a servant, eyes wide. You know what this is, not a vision, a warning, a new campaign is starting, and someone's trying to use divine messaging as a blunt instrument. You're not surprised when you're summoned to the Pharaoh's chamber minutes later. This time, it's Tani who comes for you. Is he all right? You ask, falling in step beside her. She doesn't answer immediately. Finally, she says, he's been awake since before the first drumbeat, speaking in riddles, asking for his own face. You stop. What? He wants a mirror. One that doesn't lie? That sits uncomfortably. You've spent your entire life making mirrors out of other men's faces. Smooth brows, clean lines, sharp edges. But what he's asking for isn't glass. It's truth. You arrive at the chamber and are waved through. No ceremony, no guards at the door. Just the Pharaoh seated by the window, staring at the sunrise like he's trying to read it. You approach, bowing. Divine One. He turns slowly. His face is gaunt, not weak, just drawn. He regards you with eyes that have seen too much. Barber, he says, tell me who I am. You hesitate. That's not mine to say. He gestures toward your satchel. You've held every part of me that matters. Face, skin, scalp. You've washed the lies off my cheeks. If anyone knows the truth beneath me, it's you. You don't respond. He smiles faintly. You've heard the whispers, the vision, the double. You nod slowly. Is he real? The Pharaoh asks. Yes, that lands. He leans back in his chair. And you've seen him? I have. He exhales. Does he walk like me? Yes. Does he speak like me? You pause. Not yet. The Pharaoh nods. Good. You approach with your tools, not to shave this time, just to clean his face, moisten his temples, soothe the creases. He lets you work in silence. After a while, he says, they think they can replace a man with an image, that the body is just clay and the soul can be sculpted. You wring a cloth. A lot of clay has been made to look like kings. He chuckles. You've earned your sarcasm. Then he says something you don't expect. If he is better than me, smarter, stronger, clearer, will you serve him? The room is quiet for a long moment. You fold the cloth carefully. I serve the one who bleeds when nicked. That seems to satisfy him. Before you leave, he hands you something wrapped in palm fibre, a tiny golden ring in the shape of an open eye. Wear this when the time comes, he says. Let them see who I chose. You bow low. That afternoon, the Queen calls a quiet council. Not in the throne room, in the temple garden. She, Tani, 2 generals, a priestess with more rings than fingers, and you. No one speaks until everyone is seated. The Queen looks at each of you, then says, he's testing us. The double. You all nod, no explanation needed. The priestess says, he'll move at the solstice. That's when the crowds gather. When the Pharaoh blesses the sun, if he appears, then people will believe he's returned. One general grunts, and if the real Pharaoh stands beside him, then the crowd will believe what the light tells them. They all look to you. You've seen both, the Queen says. Will it fool the people? You hesitate. In a crowd? From a distance? Yes. And up close? You shake your head. No, the real Pharaoh has a scar behind his right ear. Thin, faded. From a childhood fall, the double doesn't. They all exhale at once. The Queen leans forward. Then that's how we prove it. You frown. You want to stage a reveal? She nods. A quiet one. Enough for the right people to see. If the double tries to stand in his place, we let him for a moment. And then we show the scar. You whisper. That could collapse the court. Or save it, she says. That night you don't sleep. You think of all the faces you've touched, all the beards you've trimmed, the brows you've shaped, the lives you've served, and you wonder if, someday soon, you'll have to shave a man in front of an entire city. To prove he's real, to prove the lie isn't. You reach into your satchel and pull out the golden ring, the open eye. You slip it on your thumb and whisper, let them see. By now even the palace cats are whispering. You see them darting along sun-baked walls and sleeping beneath incense carts, their twitching ears tuned to the same murmurs you hear among the servants. The solstice is coming. The Pharaoh grows quiet. Another face walks in sandals too polished for a common man. The entire court breathes differently now, not deeper, shallower. Everyone is waiting for the moment when silence shatters and someone finally shouts, "There are two of him. You're not sleeping much. Your dreams are short and repetitive. You lift your razor to shave a face that flickers between the Pharaoh and the double. You can't tell which is which. When you finish, neither has a shadow. That morning, you visit the sacred archive. You tell no one. The scribes know you by now. They nod, gesture toward the back, and return to arguing about whether the word for divine nose requires one reed or two. You walk past shelves of palm fiber scrolls and stacks of records tied with red string until you find the section you need. Historical impersonations. It sounds ridiculous, but it's real. Egypt remembers everything, especially its mistakes. You find what you're looking for on a cracked clay tablet near the bottom of a shelf. It tells of a time, 3 dynasties ago, when a minor prince tried to impersonate his older brother to steal the crown. He succeeded for 3 days. On the 4th, a servant noticed that his ear had no scar. You exhale, it's always the small things. You trace the tablet's inscription with your thumb and whisper, "History repeats, but the razor remembers." Later that day, the queen invites you to the temple of Ma'at, privately. When you arrive, she's alone, no guards, no Tani, no priest, just her, standing beside the scale of justice, gold and ivory, shaped like a bird's wing. "Today," she says without turning, "we place truth on the scale." You step beside her. "What's the weight of truth these days?" She glances at you. "About the size of a birthmark behind the ear." You nod. She hands you a folded cloth. Inside, a list of nobles. "These are the ones who've pledged loyalty to him." "The double." She nods. "They believe what they see, or what they're paid to see." "Will they act?" "Not yet. Not until the solstice. They're waiting to see if the Pharaoh falters again, one sign of weakness, and they'll parade the impostor through the temple like a savior." You look at the list. Familiar names, some who've sat in your chair, laughed at your jokes, trusted you with their vanity. "You'll be shaving ghosts by next week." Then she adds, "And one more thing." She hands you a second cloth, this one wrapped tight, heavy, inside a new razor, obsidian, carved, sharp as regret. You turn it in your hands. "This isn't one of mine." "No," she says. "It belonged to my grandfather's barber, passed down, never used, until now." You stare at the blade. It hums in your hand. "This," she says, "is the one you'll use at the solstice." "For him?" She shakes her head. "For both. One real, one not. The people will see which one bleeds." You nod. You leave the temple with the razor wrapped carefully, your satchel heavier than ever. Back in your chamber, Hapu is stacking bowls and singing a work song about frogs and rice. He pauses when you enter. "You look like you talked to someone important." "I did." "Did they give you money?" "No." "Did they give you power?" You glance at the wrapped razor. "Something worse." He nods solemnly. "Should I polish the goat?" You blink. "What?" "For the ceremony," he says, completely serious. "Cuticle should look official." You pat his shoulder. "Focus on the towels, Hapu." That evening, you sit alone in the garden near the wig-maker's quarters. The perfumed breeze makes the air taste sweet and false. You hear steps. The double. He walks like he owns the gravel path. "You found the list?" he says. You nod. "You know who they are?" "Yes." "You could tell them," he says. "Ruin them." Or you could join them. You look at him. "Why would I do that?" He smiles. "Because I don't forget those who helped me rise." Him in the market. "Do you believe you're the Pharaoh?" The double doesn't answer right away. Instead, he walks slowly past the fountain, runs a finger along the carved stone ledge, and stares into the water's reflection. For a moment, he studies himself like a statue, still, almost reverent. Then he says, "Belief doesn't matter. People believe what's convenient, what feels safe, what shines the brightest." You don't move. "I've studied his every gesture," the double continues. "I've memorized his silences. I've copied the slouch in his spine when he's tired, and the way he taps his left thumb when he's thinking. Do you know how many mornings I spent in a mirrored room, just learning to breathe like him?" You nod once. "I believe you." He turns to face you. "So when I stand before them and raise my hand to bless the sun, will they see a lie, or will they see a god?" You glance down at your satchel, at the weight of that old unused razor now resting in the bottom like a coiled snake. "That depends," you say. "It's on whether they notice your ear." His mouth tightens. A flicker of irritation, maybe fear, maybe something else. You stand. "I'll be there," you say, "at the solstice." "I know. And I'll shave you if they ask me to." He doesn't flinch. "You'll make me look perfect." You tilt your head. "Or real." He watches you go but says nothing. That night you polish the old razor until it reflects firelight. You test its edge against a single hair. It splits before you feel the pull. You wrap it again, carefully, gently, as if it were sacred, and in a way it is. A blade that doesn't belong to you, passed down, passed on. A tool not for grooming, but for revealing. You sleep little. Dream of mirrors again, but this time both faces blink in perfect sync. In the morning the Queen summons you once more. No temple, no veils, just the war room. Yes, there is a war room. It's not labelled, of course. No helpful clay plaque that says, "Welcome, whisper your coup plans here." But it exists, carved deep beneath the western wing of the palace. Few know of it. You've never seen it before. It's dark and dry, lit by oil lamps, walls lined with maps and tokens. One of the generals is pushing carved wooden figures across a diagram of the courtyard. Another general, young, impatient, glances at you. "This is him," he scoffs. "He, the man with the tweezers?" You smile. You say that like tweezers aren't dangerous. The Queen raises a hand. The room stills. "We have 2 days," she says. "The solstice procession is already being planned by the Temple Council, who now claim neutrality." Everyone grimaces. Neutrality, in the palace, means waiting to see who survives. The Queen gestures to you. He will perform the ritual shave on both men, one before the crowd, one behind the curtain. Someone asks, "And what if they both bleed?" You shake your head. One bleeds right, one bleeds wrong. A quiet settles. The Queen approaches. "If the crowd sees doubt, they'll split. If they split, there will be no court. Only chaos." You nod, and then she says it. "If it goes badly, you end it." Your pulse skips. "You're asking me to—" "I'm asking you to be what you already are, the last hand that touches the crown before the people see it." You swallow. Later, back in your chamber, Hapu sits cross-legged with Cuticle in his lap. The goat is wearing a small piece of gold ribbon. You don't ask why. He looks up. "Are you going to die?" You sigh.
"Hopefully not this week. Do I need to learn how to trim nose hairs in case you do?" You almost smile. "Maybe just start with eyebrows." He nods seriously. You sit down beside him. The courtyard hums with crickets and far-off drums. The whole city seems to be holding its breath. And somewhere out there, 2 men are preparing for the same morning sun. One of them is a king. One of them thinks he is. And you? You'll be standing between them, holding the razor that remembers every truth the mirror has ever tried to hide. 2 days. That's all the time left before the solstice sun climbs over the temple walls, before the sacred drums echo through the plaza, and before the city holds its breath to see which man stands in the golden robes of the Pharaoh. You move through the palace like a man carrying flammable truth in a linen bag. Every corridor hums with tension. Servants walk faster, scribes write slower, guards look at you longer than they should, as if trying to decide whether your satchel carries razors or revolution. You decide to visit the one place where no one expects you. The palace kitchens. Why? Because kitchens always know. While nobles posture and priests pray, the kitchens listen, quietly soaking in gossip like bread in oil. You slip inside just after the 4th hour, when breakfast dishes are still warm and no one's pretending to be formal. The head cook is an old woman named Merit, who's seen 7 pharaohs and could probably blackmail 5 of them with nothing more than soup ladle stories. She squints at you. "What do you want, Blade Boy?" "Bread," you say. She snorts. "Flat or shop?" You smile. "Information." She ladles something steaming and suspicious into a bowl. Word is, a few of the guards who swore to the pharaoh last week now say their oaths were symbolic. You ever heard of a symbolic oath? It's like offering symbolic onions to the gods. Useless, and it makes everyone cry. You stir your stew? Anyone mention where the double might be staying? Her eyes narrow. "Not in the palace, I'll tell you that. But he's close." "Too close." You nod. "Be careful, Barber," she adds. "Knives in kitchens are friendly, and knives in temples are not." Later that day, you're summoned to the ceremonial chamber. This time, it's not for practice. It's for the rehearsal. Yes, even public revelation requires choreography. The queen greets you at the entrance. Her robe is simple today. Linen, pale blue, no gold thread. She looks tired, but precise, as if every blink has been scheduled in advance. "We'll run the procession once," she says, "from the moment the pharaoh steps into the square to the point where the crowd sees the mark." You frown. "And what if the crowd doesn't believe the mark?" "Then we pray they believe your hands." The courtyard is already arranged. Steps swept, banners hung, priests positioned like statues.
And in the centre, 2 identical robes on stands, 2 crowns, 1 stage. You walk the route, slowly, marking your steps, counting heartbeats. Then comes the part that sends a thin chill up your back. You're handed a false beard, not for the pharaoh, for the double. Apparently someone in the temple council insisted both men wear the ceremonial beard for continuity. You nearly protest, but then pause. This could work. If the beard is slightly off, just enough to wobble, to look unnatural, it might help the crowd see what they wouldn't otherwise notice. You study the piece carefully. Too perfect, too symmetrical. You quietly adjust the glue line, slightly crooked now, just enough to make the face underneath look uncertain. The queen notices, says nothing, but nods once. After the rehearsal, you return to your quarters and find Hapu sitting on the floor with 3 towels wrapped around his head like a crown. He sees your face and says, "It's happening soon, isn't it?" You nod. "Is there a chance we all survive?" You consider it. "Define survive," he shrugs. "Still breathing, no one stoned, a goat unharmed." "Then yes," you say. "A small chance." He unwraps his towels. "If something goes wrong, do I become royal barber?" You stare at him. "Not even close," you say. That night, as you oil your razors in silence, a knock taps gently at your door. You open it. It's him, the double, no guards, no ceremony. Just a man who looks like the pharaoh wearing a traveller's cloak and the expression of someone who doesn't blink often enough. "Walk with me," he says. You hesitate, then follow. He leads you through a back corridor, out past the granaries, down to the edge of the garden wall. There, beneath a fig tree, he turns. "I'm not here to threaten," he says, "or plead." "Then what?" "To ask one thing." You fold your arms. "When the moment comes and they bring me before the crowd, make me look like a king." You study him. His jaw is tense, but not with anger, with need. "I can shape a beard," you say. "I can smooth the face, but a king isn't made in front of a mirror." "No," he says, "but sometimes that's where one is revealed." You reach into your satchel, pull out a small comb, begin brushing his jawline, pretending for a moment that this is just another client. He stands perfectly still. Finally, you say, "I'll do what I must. Just know that if I shave you, I will look for the scar." He nods. "And if you don't find it?" "Then the blade goes deeper." The double doesn't flinch, just places a hand briefly on your shoulder, too familiar, and disappears into the night. You stare after him, then look down at the comb. One hair remains caught in the teeth. You tuck it into a linen wrap and whisper to the stars, one more day. Tomorrow the sun will rise, straight above the obelisk. Two men will walk the same path. Only one will be seen as Pharaoh. And you'll be the one who shows them the face beneath the crown. Solstice morning arrives without apology. The sky is a pale, flat sheet of gold by the time you step out into the courtyard. Everything smells like sandalwood and ash. Somewhere, a conch horn groans its first warning note, echoed seconds later by a chorus of ankle bells as the temple dancers begin to gather. It's beginning. You haven't slept. Neither has the queen, if her voice over the water courier's shoulder is any indication. She's been up all night, preparing the final steps, choreographing a truth-telling ritual disguised as celebration. This morning, you're not just a barber, you're a blade in human form. You walk alone to the small marble chamber, where both men wait. Yes, both. That was the Queen's final play. A private twin procession. Same robes, same walk. Two men, one throne. You enter the chamber to find them seated opposite each other. The air between them is like a coiled snake, still but not safe. The real Pharaoh nods at you. The double smiles. You bow to them both. Slowly, no sides taken. Not yet. "Who will I shave first?" you ask, glancing at the guards. The Queen's voice floats in from behind the sea. He curtain. "The one who bleeds first." There it is. The line that will echo for generations in whatever dusty schoolroom they eventually teach this in. You gesture for the real Pharaoh. He rises, his robe whispering over the stone. You've shaved him countless times, but never under this pressure. Your hands are steady. But your heartbeat is trying to escape through your palms. You unwrap the obsidian razor, the Queen's blade, the one that remembers. As you tilt the Pharaoh's chin upward, he closes his eyes. You gently press the blade to his jawline, just above the curve of his neck. The silence is cathedral thick. One pass, no blood, just the quiet hiss of hair against glassy stone. A murmur from behind the curtain, a collective exhale. You move to the other cheek. Another slow stroke, clean, effortless, still no blood. You lean in close, just enough to whisper, "Are you certain you want to reveal the scar?" His eyes flicker open. "I want them to see all of me." You nod. With a small flick of your linen cloth, you fold back a segment of his collar. There, just behind the right ear. A thin, almost invisible line, the mark of a boyhood fall from a palace step. The Queen steps forward now. "The mark of our true king," she says, "cut not by blade but by fate." She gestures for the people, priests, nobles, temple guards, to come forward. They do, one by one, quietly. Each one examining the ear, the scar, the silence. One priest begins to cry. The Pharaoh bows his head. Then your second task. You turn to the double. He has not moved, but his jaw is clenched, his shoulders just a fraction too straight. Still he steps forward, wordless. He kneels. You raise the blade, stroke once, a nick. Blood, it beads quickly, just a single line of red, delicate but visible. He doesn't flinch, but his eyes, those eyes, flick toward the crowd. He knows what they saw. It wasn't the cut, it was the difference. You lean close, as you did before. This time you whisper, "Not too late to walk away." He doesn't answer. Instead, he reaches into his robe and places something in your hand, a piece of carved stone, a token. One side bears the image of Ra, the other, a mirror. He murmurs, "If you ever need me again." And then he stands, bows low. The Queen raises her hand. "Let the record show," she declares. "Two men were tested by the razor. Only one bore the mark of destiny." The crowd echoes, "Only one?" The double turns, walks into the courtyard. No guards chase him. No judgment falls. He disappears down the garden path, robes dragging just slightly, like a page torn carefully from a sacred scroll. You turn back to the Pharaoh. He hasn't moved. You kneel. Majesty. He places a hand on your shoulder. You did what no priest could. You revealed truth without drawing blood. You glance down at the razor. Almost without thinking, you say, "Only one of them bled." He meets your gaze and says, softly, "Yes, but that doesn't mean he wasn't right." A strange silence settles over the chamber, heavy. Then light. A breeze, soft, citrusy. A signal that the ceremony is over and the rest of the world is about to catch up. The Queen moves beside you. "You may rest now." You shake your head. "I think I've forgotten how." Later, in your quarters, Hapu is feeding cuticle-dried pomegranate rinds. "You're alive," he says. You sound disappointed. "I had a whole plan, black veils, sobbing, haggling for your scissors." You pat his shoulder. "Maybe next year?" You unwrap the obsidian razor. It's lighter now, or maybe you are. You set it carefully in the cedar box where your most important tools rest, and then for the first time in what feels like years, you lie down, not to dream, but simply to stop moving. Tomorrow the court will go back to its rhythm. And you'll go back to faces, to blades, to small truths in a world of bigger lies. Because sometimes the sharpest thing in the palace isn't the plot, it's the man who knows exactly where to press the edge. You expect the morning after the solstice to be quiet. It isn't. The palace is buzzing like a beehive that's just realized the beekeeper is gone. Messages rush down corridors faster than feet can carry them. Servants whisper in corners. Scribes copy scrolls while their eyes drift toward every passing shadow. The double has vanished. No one knows where he went. Some say he boarded a merchant barge before sunrise. Others claim he slipped into the necropolis disguised as a priest. One kitchen boy swears he saw the double feeding a monkey papyrus leaves by the fish market. But that boy also thinks frogs cause rain, so... You don't ask. You already know. He walked away. Not defeated, just folded into myth. A man-shaped rumour, now more useful as a ghost than a threat. The Queen summons you to the upper garden. Not the usual place for post-political fallout. But she's there, under a fig tree in full fruit, wearing a robe so plain it's almost rebellious. She's eating grapes. "Was that the end of something?" she asks, not looking up. You shrug. "Or the beginning of something else?" She glances sideways. "You still have the razor?" You nod. "Good, keep it sharp." You sit beside her on the bench. Bees hum nearby, circling the overripe figs. "I thought I'd feel more victorious," she admits. "You just saved a kingdom from splitting in half." "Yes," she says, "and still I wonder if the better liar lost." You look at her. He didn't believe he was lying. She smiles. "Exactly." You leave the garden without any orders, no tasks, no veiled threats, just a strange emptiness that sits in your stomach like unfinished bread. Later that day, Hapu enters your quarters carrying a small wooden box. "It came for you," he says. "No name, just a carving on top." You recognize the symbol immediately, a mirror. You open the box slowly. Inside is a single lock of hair, perfectly combed, and beneath it a folded scrap of linen with one sentence: "In case truth ever needs a shadow." You tuck it away without a word, because you know what it is. An offer, a reminder, a promise that if this world forgets the double, you won't. The next morning, you go back to work. Not politics, not ceremonies, just faces, cheeks to smooth, eyebrows to tame, nostrils to trim. Yes, even the mighty require maintenance. Your first client is Lord Mahu. Yes, that Lord Mahu, the one you shaved bald not long ago, when he was trying to flee with discretion. He walks in like nothing happened, sits down, crosses his legs, says, "Make me look slightly less guilty." You raise an eyebrow. "You mean younger?" "No," he says flatly, "less guilty." You laugh, just once, and begin. He flinches when the blade touches his skin. Still using the Queen's razor? He mutters. You pause. Should I not? He shrugs. Just don't slip. I have enough problems. You finish the shave in silence. When he leaves, you notice he's dropped a token on the floor. You pick it up. It's small, flat, gold, stamped with the royal seal. On the back, barely scratched in with a pin, are 2 letters, DF doubles, friend? You place it in your drawer. You don't know what it means yet, but you will. That night, while Hapu snores like a lazy sphinx and Cuticle the goat chews thoughtfully on someone's sock, you sit by the window and clean your blades, one by one. Steel, obsidian, bronze. You touch the edge of the Queen's razor, still flawless, still silent. And then, for reasons you can't explain, you pick up a blank scroll and begin to write. Not a letter, not a list, a manual. How to recognize the truth in a face. You don't know if anyone will ever read it, but after everything, you've realized something. You are no longer just a barber. You're a historian of cheeks, a philosopher of follicles, a quiet guardian of kings and the lies they wear like perfume. The next day, the boy from the Temple of Ra appears with a sealed note. He hands it to you, bows, vanishes. You open the note. Inside is a single line. We may need you for the coronation next month. Bring your sharpest. You stare at the ink until it dries completely. Another coronation, another face, another crown. You sigh and whisper to no one in particular. I hope they have eyebrows. By now you can smell change in the corridors. It's not the scent of war, not metal and sweat, but something subtler, like the first drop of oil on a hot pan. Anticipation, crackling in slow motion. The Queen has kept her word. The palace still stands. The Pharaoh still reigns. The obelisks still point to the heavens as if daring the gods to blink. But the people? They're watching more closely than ever. You step into the morning sun, which slices across the mosaic tiles of the courtyard like a divine blade. The guards bow a little lower. The stewards speak a little softer. Someone leaves figs by your door now without asking. You are no longer just the barber. You are the man who cut between 2 kings. You walk to the Pharaoh's private chamber, satchel over your shoulder. You've been summoned not for a shave, but for a conversation. That, you've learned, is more dangerous. He greets you alone, seated on the floor beside a papyrus scroll, covered in half-written thoughts. Sit, he says, motioning to the space beside him. You do. He's barefaced, relaxed, but his eyes flicker with something restless. Do you believe in masks? He asks. You shrug. Only when they fit. He laughs. That's a very Barber answer. He hands you a folded cloth. Inside, a carved ivory disc with a small mirror set in the center. The priests say it belonged to a scribe who went mad after seeing his reflection too clearly. You blink. That sounds plausible. He nods. Lately, I wonder if power is a mirror. The longer you stare at it, the more your face changes. Yay. You don't answer. But you understand. You've seen the face of a man pretending to be king. You've also seen the face of a king pretending he isn't tired. The Pharaoh leans back on his elbows, watching the sun crawl across the floor. I want to leave, he says suddenly. You turn to him. Leave what? Not forever, he adds quickly. Just for a day, a night. A walk by the river without anyone bowing or whispering or waiting for me to bless the papyrus crop with a raised eyebrow. You tilt your head. Incognito? He smiles. As incognito as a royal face can be. You sigh. You'll need a different beard? He chuckles. So you begin crafting it. That afternoon you sit in your quarters with goat hair, linen strips, and just enough beeswax to hold a lie in place. Hapu watches with fascination. You're making the anti-beard? No, you say. I'm making a freedom beard. He nods solemnly. Should I make disguises too? You mean costumes? I've got extra tunics, a cartwheel, some dried apricots. We could fake a travelling wine cellar. You stare at him, then shrug. Fine, but you're carrying the cart. That night, under a borrowed cloak and an admittedly ridiculous hat, the Pharaoh slips out of the palace with you and Hapu. No guards, no servants, no ceremony, just 3 people and a goat pretending to be merchants of sour fruit and bad luck. You walk through the markets and no one notices, because the beard works, the posture works, the silence works. You buy cheap trinkets, eat figs from a stand, listen to a man with only 4 teeth sing a song about how ducks are the reincarnated souls of angry gods. And the Pharaoh? He laughs. Hard. It startles you. Even Cuticle rears back slightly, offended, but for a moment he looks like a boy again, not a ruler, not a symbol, just a man in sandals full of dust and joy. At the riverbank he sits with his feet in the water, says softly, "Oh, no one bowed today." You nod, he sighs. "And yet I feel more real than I have in years." You don't say anything, just pass him a fig. He chews slowly, staring at the stars. "Would it be foolish," he asks, "to have a statue built, not of me, but of the barber who reminded me I was human?" You grin. "Only if the statue has better hair than I do." He laughs again. And then silence. Just frogs, crickets, water, licking the bank. The next morning he returns to the palace before dawn, still disguised. You sneak in through the servants' entrance. No one sees, no one needs to. Later, at your bench, as you clean your razors and prepare for another day of royal grooming, Hapu sets a small stone on the table beside you. "What's that?" "From the river," he says, "where you made a king laugh." You run your thumb over it. Smooth, warm, unremarkable. And yet, everything. Because in this palace of masks and myths, sometimes the sharpest truth is a quiet moment no one sees, and the sharpest blade is the one that lets someone feel free, even for a night. The statue arrives 3 days later. Yes, a real one. You thought he was joking. You hoped he was joking, but no, there it is, delivered at dawn by 4 grumbling stone carriers and 1 priest in training who keeps staring at your face like he's trying to figure out what all the fuss is about. It's not huge, thankfully. About waist high, set in polished limestone. A seated figure loosely resembling you, if you were far more muscular and maybe 30% more heroic, holding a straight razor like a divine scepter. Underneath, carved in old script, the one who reveals. Hapu sees it and gasps. "You're officially mythological." Cuticle the goat snorts, unimpressed. You stare at the thing for a full minute before whispering, "It doesn't even have my nose." Still, it's oddly touching, also a little terrifying. You tuck it into a quiet corner of the garden where people won't trip over it or ask too many questions, because questions are beginning to surface again. The double may be gone, but the tremors he left behind still echo through the palace. This week alone, 2 nobles have claimed divine visions, proving the Pharaoh must rest and appoint a regent. Both visions involved fish for some reason. A high priest refused to bow, citing an obscure festival of intermittent sovereignty. And a scroll was found in the archives suggesting the Pharaoh may, in fact, be a reincarnated honeybee. You'd laugh, but it's all starting to feel familiar. You begin noticing odd pairs of eyes in the courtyard again. Double takes, paused conversations when you approach, and one particular noble, Lord Setau, schedules 4 beard-shaping appointments in a single week. No one needs that much grooming, so you dig, carefully, quietly, and what you find is this: a whisper network, lords and scribes and middle-tier officials gathering in wine rooms, sharing theories, passing tokens. Some still believe the double was the true king. Others believe you chose the double by not exposing him sooner, you, the barber. Apparently you've become a player in a game you never wanted to join. And then the Queen summons you again, but not to her chambers, to the Hall of Echoes. You hate that name. It's a long, curved chamber designed to carry voices in eerie loops, often used for ritual music or confusing foreign diplomats. She stands alone, flanked by 2 guards who pretend not to listen. "I'm being challenged," she says. "Not directly, not yet, but it's coming." You nod. "And they want you on their side." Again, you nod. "They've already approached you?" "One sent wine," you say. She raises an eyebrow. Was it good? Excellent. She sighs. That makes it worse. You step closer. If they move against you, what will you do? She pauses. Her voice lowers. I'll let them. You stare at her. What? I'll let them try, she clarifies. And when they fail, when the court sees how weak their vision of leadership really is, we'll never hear from them again. You shake your head. Dangerous gamble. I'm tired of clever games, she says. It's time for blunt truth. She looks at you. I'll need you close when it happens. You nod. Do you want me to shave them after? You ask, half a joke. She smiles but doesn't answer. The next evening a scroll arrives for you, sealed in black wax. Inside is a single question. If a mirror is broken, which face does it reflect? No signature, no symbol, but you know exactly who sent it. You don't answer, but you begin keeping your razors in your sleeve now, just in case. You also tell Hapu to stop talking to the market boy with too many questions about where the Pharaoh sleeps, and you move the statue, yes, just a few feet, away from the main path, because now even stone can draw attention you don't want. But that night, as you sharpen a tiny bronze blade for trimming nose hair on the vizier's cousin, yes, that's still your job, you feel something unexpected. Calm. Not peace, not safety, but calm. Because you've been through the fire already. You've shaved a ghost, touched the truth, walked with kings and shadows, and if they come for you now, you know what to do. You won't fight. You won't run. You'll offer them a chair. And ask, would you like your mirror straight or angled slightly to the left? By the end of that week, you've shaved 17 different versions of the same worry of 17 different faces. Anxious nobles, paranoid priests, even a general with hands like bricks who whispered, while you shaped his sideburns, if the queen falls, I go back to goats. You're not sure what that means, but you nod anyway. It's hard to tell what's more fragile these days, power, or the people holding on to it like a cracked vase held together with spit and papyrus glue. And through it all, you, still wielding your blades, still smiling, still pretending you're just the man with the towels and the oil. But one morning, your silence catches up to you. The queen sends for you again, only this time not to speak, to watch. You're led into a long, windowless chamber, a private hearing hall. Inside, two nobles are standing like statues caught mid-lie. The queen sits above them on a small platform, flanked by two record keepers with tablets and tired expressions. When you enter, she gestures for you to stand beside her. No words, just a nod. One of the nobles is Lord Setau, the overgroomed one. The other is Lady Tia, who once threatened to outlaw goat milk because it sounded peasanty. The queen addresses them evenly.
You've been meeting in secret, Setau tries to protest. We were discussing agricultural reform. She raises one eyebrow. Over jugs of imported wine with a man who once impersonated the Pharaoh? Silence. Lady Tia folds faster than a cheap tunic. We were only listening. We never agreed to support. The queen lifts a hand, then gestures to you. This, she says quietly, is the man who knows what it means to see the truth behind a face. Now that gets their attention. You can feel their eyes shift to you, evaluating, measuring, not for a shave, but for whether you'd slice the truth into their skin if asked. You say nothing, you don't need to. She lets the silence do the rest, then waves them away, dismissed, cowards in silk, scurrying like beetles after a rain. When they're gone, she exhales. You ask, what was that? A warning, she replies.
One that doesn't stain the floor? That night, you find something tucked inside your satchel. A folded piece of reed parchment. 2 words. Thank you. No signature, no mark, but it smells faintly of cedar and crushed pomegranate. The queen? You tuck it into the cedar box with the obsidian razor, the carved token, the lock of hair, the black wax scroll. You're building a collection, not of weapons, of moments. The next day, a girl from the dye workshop runs up to you in the corridor, panting. "I saw someone trying to look like the Pharaoh." She gasps. You blink. "Recently?" "This morning, at the spice vendor's stall. He wore a scarf. His walk was too good. I followed him. He vanished." You give her a sweet roll, tell her nothing, but inside, you feel it too, like a thread being tugged at the edge of your vision. The double might be gone. But the idea of him? Still very much alive. You spend the evening inspecting disguises, not yours, Hapu's. He's gotten creative. "This one," he says proudly, "makes me look like a disgruntled melon seller." He's wearing a turban made of curtain fabric and holding a spoon like a scepter. You don't have the heart to tell him he looks like a small, confused prince. Instead, you ask, "Why all the disguises?" He shrugs. "If you vanish, someone needs to investigate. Preferably me." Incognito. You sigh. "And the goat?" Cuticle trots into the room, wearing a garland of what may be onions. "She's the bait," Hapu explains. "Bait for what?" "Unclear," he admits. You decide to make a note in your scroll. Never underestimate people who believe they're useless. They usually aren't. The palace begins to settle slightly in the days that follow, like a boat drifting just enough to seem calm, but only until the next storm. Still your shop fills again. Shaves, oils, conversations that feel like fencing matches. Everyone still smiles, but behind their eyes you see calculations. Who's loyal, who's pretending, who's already dreaming of the next face that might wear the crown. And through it all, you remain the same, the razor, the mirror, the one who sees what the courtiers refuse to say out loud. You're no longer just the barber. You are the kingdom's most dangerous listener. Sleep, when it comes, arrives like a thief, quick, uninvited, gone too soon. Lately, your dreams have blurred into strange collages, mirrors without reflections, hands holding razors made of shadow, crowds cheering not a pharaoh, but a barber crowned in lather and linen. You wake with the smell of sandalwood in your nose and the weight of secrets pressing across your chest like a warm stone. Something is building again, not a coup, not exactly, but a question, unspoken, unanswered, circulating like a fly that won't land. And you can feel it moving in glances, in pauses, in the sudden hush when you enter a room. It all starts with a simple comment. Lord Dedu, during his midday shave, asks, "So, when will the Pharaoh name his heir?" You stop mid-stroke. He smiles, smug and oblivious. You finish the shave in silence, but your mind doesn't, because he's not the only one asking. Within 2 days, 4 other clients mention it. One frames it as idle gossip, one as a joke, one as a prayer, and one as a warning. The Pharaoh has no clear successor, no child old enough, no brother near enough, no nephew trusted enough. It's a void, and in power, voids attract ambition like wet clay draws sand. You're summoned again, not by the queen this time, by the Pharaoh himself. He greets you in his meditation chamber, surrounded by incense, lotus blossoms, and the muted chime of copper bells. He doesn't speak for a long time, just watches the smoke curl. Finally, he says, "Have you ever cut hair that didn't grow back?" You blink. Is that a riddle or a regret? He chuckles once, then falls quiet again. "I'm considering something unusual," he says slowly. "A proclamation, one that will answer the whispers before they become daggers." You wait. He studies you. "Tell me honestly, would they accept a successor without royal blood?" You blink again. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you bleed in public when you name them." He smirks. "That was a joke, right?" You don't smile, because the court has seen too much recently. They've learned that blood, true or not, can be persuasive. The Pharaoh leans forward, lowering his voice. "There is a boy," he says, "son of a farmer, but raised in the palace since he was 5. Smart, quiet, learns fast, kind, no ambition." Sounds dangerous, you say. He nods. Exactly. He hands you a scroll, sealed, unbroken. If something happens to me, anything, you give this to the Queen. Not before, not after, not unless. You take it. It's heavier than it looks, not in weight, in intention. Outside, in the shade of the southern wing, you sit with Hapu and Cuticle. He's braiding garlic into the goat's neck. For protection, he explains. You say, from whom? He thinks. From everyone. You watch the workers repairing a cracked wall by the temple. Dust floats like ghosts through the air. Two scribes are arguing about whether divine legitimacy can be inherited sideways. You lean back against the warm stone and realize something. You are no longer the secret keeper. You're the guardian of the future, a terrifying promotion. That night, you walk the palace alone. The moon is bright enough to sharpen shadows, and the corridors hum with that unique silence only royal places know, a silence heavy with listening. You pause by the Hall of Faces, the corridor where portraits of past pharaohs stare down from painted limestone panels. You study their eyes. One looks amused, one looks judgmental, one looks suspiciously like he's trying not to sneeze. But none look ready, not for what's coming, because naming a successor, especially a non-royal one, is like trying to change the course of the Nile using only a spoon. It might work, but only if no one notices until it's done. The next day, a page delivers a package to your quarters. No name, just a wax seal with a broken mirror. You unwrap it carefully. Inside, a single gold coin. One side bears the face of the pharaoh, the other the face of the double. You drop it. It spins across the table and lands between your razors. Mocking, you whisper to no one, he's still here. Not physically, but as an idea. And sometimes, ideas are more dangerous than any sword. Later that evening, the Queen visits you in your shop. Rare. She sits in your chair, though she doesn't ask for a shave or a trim. She just sits. Then softly. He's told you, hasn't he? You don't play dumb. Yes? And he gave you something. You nod. She doesn't ask to see it. She just says, if the court finds out, they'll riot. You nod again. Can I trust you? She asks. You look her in the eye, then pass her a towel. She wipes her face. It's clean. No blood, no truth. Not yet. But it's coming. The city begins to buzz again, but this time not with rebellion or rumors of doubles in the shadows. No, this buzz is brighter, louder. It's festival season. A carefully scheduled distraction, a golden blanket flung across the capital to make everyone forget the kingdom is, quietly, standing on the edge of a cliff made of secrets. It starts with banners, long ones, painted with scenes of Osiris, Horus, harvest gods, and improbably cheerful fish. Then come the musicians, drums, flutes, handbells, and vendors hauling carts full of honeyed dates, roast duck, and fig cakes that crumble just by looking at them too hard. You watch from the southern colonnade, arms crossed, while Hapu throws flower petals at tourists. They think it's all joy, he says. But this much colour, this much noise, it's hiding something. You glance at the crowd. The Queen stands near the temple gates, flanked by advisers. The Pharaoh watches from a shaded balcony, silent still, like a statue, debating whether to speak. And beneath it all, you feel it. That same thread, that same quiet tension, humming just below the joy. Because everyone knows this is more than a party. It's a stage, and someone's going to step onto it. That afternoon, you're summoned to the royal nursery. That's new. You haven't been there in years, not since a cousin of the Queen needed a ceremonial braid before her first blessing. You enter quietly. Inside, a boy, 10, maybe 11, sits cross-legged with a papyrus scroll and an impressively serious frown. He looks up. You're the barber, he says, as if accusing you of a crime. I am. You cut the false pharaoh. You hesitate, then nod. I did. He stares. Did it feel wrong? You smile. It felt precise. The Queen enters behind you. He's memorized every decree issued in the last 5 years, she says, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. He also believes crocodiles are just lazy dragons. The boy grins. I'm not wrong. She looks at you. He's the one. The farmer's son, the quiet one. The heir the Pharaoh never had. Until now. You kneel down beside him. You'll need a good beard someday, you say. He snorts. I already grew one. It fell off. The Queen stifles a laugh. A glue and ambition, you say. Both can be dangerous in the wrong hands. You rise. She walks you to the doorway. I want you near him, she says, from now on. Guard? No, mirror. And that's how it begins, the transition. Quiet, unannounced. You start seeing the boy more often in the palace gardens, the archives, the scribe halls. You pretend to adjust his collar, but really you're checking for signs of fear, doubt, pressure. He hides them well, too well. One day he asks, do you think anyone will ever believe I belong? You hand him your smallest razor. Everyone's face changes when they think someone's watching. Practice with this. Learn your own first. He takes it seriously. Later, Hapu says, you just gave a potential pharaoh a nose hair trimmer. You shrug.
I gave him a beginning. But not everyone is ready for a new beginning. That week you hear whispers again about lineage, about bloodlines, about old cousins suddenly appearing at court, showing off questionable birthmarks shaped like falcons and lotus petals. One even claims his breath smells divinely of sin, cinnamon. You roll your eyes so hard you nearly sprain something. The Queen is unfazed. The louder they lie, she says, the closer we are to truth. Still, pressure builds. Some demand a ceremony. Others want omens. A few want you to say publicly who shaved the real king and who didn't. You refuse, because if they need your words to decide what they saw with their own eyes, they're not ready for truth anyway. Then comes the letter. No seal, just a folded strip of cloth slipped under your door. It reads, he will not survive the flood. You burn it, but not before memorizing the handwriting. You start carrying 2 razors now, and you teach the boy how to hold one, not to cut, but to understand balance, pressure, stillness. He learns fast. One evening, you're summoned to the roof of the palace. Strange request. You climb the narrow steps, feeling the wind grow stronger with each level. When you reach the top, the city stretches before you, wide and golden and breathing. The Pharaoh is there, alone. He looks out over the skyline. It's nearly time. You nod. I won't live forever. No one does. But I want it to matter, the choice, the change. I want them to look back and say, that was the moment everything turned and no one bled. You think about the double, about the scar, about the quiet nick on a jawline that changed the shape of a kingdom. Then let them see your hand guide his. He nods, hands you a scroll. This one you can open? You do. Inside is a single sentence. This boy is my breath beyond breath. I name him as mine. You fold it, hand it back. It's time, he says. Below, drums begin to beat, and the banners of the gods flutter just enough to reveal the sun. The drums continue into the evening, steady and low, like a heartbeat beneath the marble. Preparations unfold faster than anyone expected. The boy, now the heir, though not officially named, is moved to a private chamber just off the Queen's quarters. Guards are reassigned. Scribes walk with purpose. The royal falconer suddenly seems very interested in symbolism again. And you? You begin shaping the moment, literally. You start with the boy's robe. You hem it with clean lines, no gold, no pomp, just authority wrapped in quiet. Then you examine his face. He sits very still, like a statue waiting to be carved. I don't want to look like him, he says softly. The Pharaoh? He shakes his head. The double? You pause. He's still thinking about that man. And why wouldn't he? The kingdom still does. Somewhere in the alleys, someone's whispering his name. You take a warm cloth and gently wipe the boy's forehead. Then don't look like anyone, you say. Look like yourself, but steadier. He nods. You begin trimming, just enough to shape the brows, soften the angles of his cheek. He has a sharpness to him already.
You don't need to invent strength, you only need to reveal it. Outside, in the corridor, Hapu is pacing. He's been pacing for 2 hours. Every few minutes, he stops to ask, "Is it over?" To which you reply, "No." Then, "Now?" Still no. Then, "Is the goat allowed to attend the proclamation?" You sigh. Only if she promises not to chew anything sacred. He looks disappointed. Cuticle looks smug. That night, the Queen invites only 5 people to the final chamber before the announcement. You're one of them. The others, a high priest, a military advisor, a scribe, and, unexpectedly, Merit, the palace cook. "I told you," she says, brushing flour off her sleeves. "Kitchens know everything." The Queen paces slowly. This must happen without doubt. No interruption, no second-guessing. The boy will stand beside the Pharaoh, the proclamation will be read, and then the silence must be absolute. You ask, "What if it isn't?" She doesn't answer. Instead, she looks at you. "You still have the Queen's blade?" You nod. She points to the scribe. "When the scroll is read, I want you to hold it, openly. Let them see it. Let them remember." You swallow. Because that blade is more than a razor now. It's memory and warning. The next morning, everything moves in measured beats. The plaza fills before sunrise. Courtiers in their best robes, merchants standing on baskets, priests clutching amulets, children perched on stone lions, eyes wide. The air smells like incense, dust, and excitement. Not quite joy, not quite fear, just expectation. You stand beside the Pharaoh at the top of the ceremonial stairs. The boy, dressed in white, with a single copper bracelet, stands at his side. His hands tremble once, then stop. The Queen steps forward. In her hand, the scroll. She nods at you. You raise the Queen's blade. Let the sun catch its edge. A murmur ripples through the crowd. The scribe reads, "Let it be known by hand and by breath that the Pharaoh names as heir the child who grew not from blood, but from the soil of truth. He shall be known as Neferu. He shall walk with the weight of kings." No applause, no cheers, just silence. Then, one voice, cracked, elderly, from the back of the plaza. "He bears no royal mark." All heads turn. The Queen doesn't move. You step forward. "Do you wish to see the last man who wore a false mark?" You say, your voice low, calm, razor still visible. The old man falls silent. The moment holds. The boy, Neferu, lifts his chin and does something no one expects. He kneels, not to the Pharaoh, not to the Queen, to the people, just a small, deliberate gesture, but in it, an entire kingdom's future. And then the Pharaoh places a hand on his shoulder. Not heavy, not dramatic, just enough. Enough to say, "This is real." The crowd exhales, and then, slowly, begins to bow. A wave of reverence rolling through the square, until even the loudest doubters are on their knees, whispering his name. Neferu. New day. New shape to the world. Back in the palace, after the sun has climbed high and the crowd has faded, the boy finds you in the courtyard. He still has the razor. "Will I ever use it?" he asks. You look at him, then smile. Only if you forget your face. He nods once, then hands it back. "I'd rather remember." That evening, for the first time in weeks, the palace breathes. Not sighs, not mutters, not clenched waiting, but breathes the way old stone does after a storm, quietly proud of surviving. You sit in your shop, oiling your blades, while Hapu counts figs like he's inventing math. "Do we still work here?" he asks. You glance up. "I think so. Because I told a lot of people I knew the heir before he had eyebrows." You chuckle. "That may haunt you later." He shrugs. "Worth it." You glance around your shop. It's cleaner than usual, quieter. Even Cuticle seems unusually calm, chewing solemnly on the sleeve of someone's abandoned robe. But beneath the calm, something new hums. Not threat, not danger, attention. Because now you're more than the barber who saved the throne. You're the barber to 2 pharaohs, sort of, and that means everyone wants a piece of you again. By midweek, your appointment scroll is full, not just shaves, symbolic shaves. One priest asks you to bless his scalp by trimming away the sins of envy. You respond by charging double. Another noble requests a beard that subtly implies I supported the rightful heir all along. You ask if he wants that written in oil on his forehead, or just implied by his left eyebrow. He doesn't laugh. Later, the Queen visits again, this time with no fanfare. She sits on your bench, pulls off her sandals and sighs so deeply the walls seem to exhale too. I should feel victorious, she says. You offer her a cloth for her brow. You should, but I feel like we just dodged a crocodile with a crown, and now we're expected to dance like we planned it. You nod. That's how peace works. It's not a reward, it's a very quiet dare. She closes her eyes. You always sound like a philosopher when you're tired. I'm never tired, you say, yawning. She smiles, then hands you something wrapped in silk. You unfold it. It's a single gold hairpin, shaped like a razor, inscribed along the edge. For the one who revealed. You trace it with your thumb. Symbolic accessories, you say. How royal of me. Don't stab anyone with it, she says. Unless you mean to. You return to your bench, set the pin in the cedar box with the rest of your legacy and objects. You're going to need a bigger box soon. Later, as the moon climbs, you wander into the northern garden. Neferu is there, alone, skipping stones into the reflecting pool. Practicing for diplomacy? You ask. He grins. Practicing for silence. He offers you a stone. You toss it. It skips once, then sinks. Disaster, he says. You'll make a fine pharaoh, you reply. He's quiet for a moment, then asks, will I always be judged by who I wasn't? You sit beside him. Only if you try too hard to be someone else. He nods, then pulls out the tiny razor you gave him, the practice one. I carry it, he says. Not to use, just to remember that power comes with edges. You raise an eyebrow. Where'd you hear that? You, he says. You muttered it while trimming Lord Mahu's ear hair. You laugh. I say some wise things under pressure. He leans back. Do you think the double is still alive? You glance at the water. Ripples fade. I think ideas don't die, you say. Even if the face does. He nods again. I hope I never become an idea. Too late, you whisper. But he's already tossing another stone. As it skips across the water, once, twice, 3 times, you realize something simple. This kingdom might finally be safe. Not forever, not even for long. But long enough to grow again, to breathe, to sleep without checking shadows for masks. The queen reclaims her evenings. The pharaoh reclaims his rest. And Neferu? He reclaims the palace by doing nothing flashy. Just being there, learning, watching. You return to your work. Cheeks, ears, hairline is, and every once in a while, someone leans in and says, tell me, what did it feel like choosing between kings? You always smile. I didn't choose. You sharpen a blade. They did. Time, once again, slips into rhythm. Not quite peace, let's not get foolish, but something close to balance, like a tray of amphorae stacked by someone half-drunk but surprisingly gifted at geometry. The palace moves as palaces do, in circles. Advisors advise, priests recite. Hapu forgets where he put the goat. And Neferu? He grows, not just in size, though yes, he's taller now, voice deeper, hair thicker, which pleases you to no end. But also in presence. The way he listens, the way he waits before speaking, the way he walks as if he's trying not to break the floor. You see it most clearly when he begins asking questions that no one taught him to ask. Why do the taxes favour linen merchants? What happens to the blind scribe who can't read anymore? Why is the Eastern District still flooded when we haven't had rain in 3 moons? Each time you give him the same answer. Because someone powerful decided not to notice, and each time he answers, then I'll notice harder. You've never wanted to hug someone and hand them a clean razor more. He's not perfect. He still trips over protocol. He accidentally calls a foreign emissary's wife a large goose due to a translation error. He once tries to grow a ceremonial moustache and ends up looking like a startled cat. But you're proud. You don't say it, but you are. Then comes the funeral, not of anyone famous, just a sandal maker, an old woman who once repaired the Queen's favourite slippers, and once told Hapu he had goat eyes, but in a nice way. The Queen insists on attending, so does Neferu. It's quiet, simple. You stand near the back and watch as the heir of Egypt helps lower a coffin made from date palm wood into the ground of a communal burial garden. Someone asks, "Is that the prince?" Someone else whispers, "Maybe he's just very symmetrical." But the truth settles in. He's not there to be seen. He's there because someone mattered. You later ask him why. He says, "If I only show up when there's gold, I'll never know what people lose." That night, you add another line to your secret scroll. A true leader attends small endings. Things begin to shift in the court again, not violently, just quietly. Some of the old nobles fade. Some leave. Some conveniently fall off balconies they maybe shouldn't have been leaning against. New voices rise. A young woman from the archives becomes the head of record-keeping after proving 3 ministers faked harvest totals. A mute priest develops a whole system of hand signs that speeds up ceremonies and reduces yawning by 80%. Even Hapu, yes, even him, is asked to supervise a small team of delivery runners. He accepts with all the pride of someone who's just inherited 3 palaces and a very talkative camel. "Management," he says, chest puffed. You roll your eyes and keep trimming. Then, one afternoon, Neferu appears in your doorway holding something behind his back. "I need your help," he says. "Of course," you reply. "Is it a rebellion?" "No," he says. "Worse." He pulls out a wig, a terrible, tangled, too shiny. "What possessed you to buy this thing?" "I have to attend a masquerade in the temple district. They'll expect fun." You blink. "Fun?" He shudders. "Yes." You take the wig, examine it, then toss it into the brazier. "We'll make a better one." So you do, and somehow at that ridiculous party, dressed as a retired crocodile deity with a limp, Neferu dances. He laughs. He eats fried beetles. He tells someone he's just a potter's assistant with good posture. And for a brief, absurd moment, no one bows. Not because they don't recognize him, but because they do and choose to let him breathe. That night, he thanks you, not with words, just a small nod and a clean razor returned to your hand polished. You sit alone afterward, watching the moon slice across the courtyard stones, and think this is what kingship should feel like. Not thunder, not fear, but moments, small ones, soft ones, that sharpen over time until they quietly, absolutely change everything. The winds change again, not suddenly, not with the violence of a storm, more like a blanket slowly being pulled off a sleeping city. Whispers begin to shift tone, not questions of power, not threats, not rumours, but acceptance. A low hum of "this is working" passed from merchant to priest to scribe. The temple murals include Neferu now, still small, still respectful, but there, holding scrolls, not sceptres, sitting beside, not above. It's a symbolic whisper in paint, he belongs. You notice fewer guards outside his chamber, not because danger has passed, but because the danger respects him now. One morning, the Queen calls you for a private sitting. Not in her court, not in her garden, but in the royal archive, dusty, quiet, full of secrets. She hands you a scroll. Inside, sketches, plans for a memorial, not a tomb, not a statue, a library. A place where truth doesn't depend on who's speaking, she says, where history isn't carved in stone, it's remembered with ink. You blink. You're asking me? She smiles. You're the most precise man I know. You point to your blades. I don't carve papyrus? No, she says, but you carve memory. And so you begin helping. You meet with scribes, with builders, with priests of ink and the quietest woman in the city, an archivist named Patet, who once copied an entire epic poem using bird quills and crushed lotus dye because it just felt more alive that way. Plans unfold. The archive will hold all known decrees, ancestral lineages, medicinal scrolls, temple records, and, tucked in a back chamber, the quiet story of a barber who once knew when not to speak. You try to protest. "Remove my name," the Queen shakes her head. Not even kings get to rewrite the truth once it's told. Later, as you walk the nearly complete corridors of stone and clay, you pause in a room not yet labelled, and there, already etched in soft limestone, to the one who made the blade gentle. You don't cry, but you do sit for a long time and let the silence thank you. As the seasons shift, the capital eases. Neferu takes more meetings on his own. The Pharaoh, aging, slower, speaks less, observes more. One evening, during a quiet dinner in the open-air hall, he leans toward you and says, "I think I've finally learned to enjoy shadows." You raise an eyebrow. "The quiet ones," he explains, "the kind that don't chase you, just keep you cool." You smile and pass him a fig. That week, Neferu requests your presence before his first public arbitration, a land dispute between two families arguing over a fig orchard and a wandering donkey. "It's simple," he says, "but I don't want to get cocky." You adjust his collar, check his posture, then say, "Don't judge to be right. Judge so they'll accept you're wrong." He winces. "That's unfair." "Exactly. He rules." They both grumble, which means he ruled correctly. Later, you and Hapu walk the market district together. Cuticle trots behind, wearing a flower crown she clearly despises. Merchants wave. Children yell, "Barber, tell us a joke." You do. It's about an ibis, a papyrus scroll, and an unfortunate misunderstanding involving soup. It makes no sense. They love it. And you realize the kingdom has space for laughter again, not performance laughter, not courtly chuckles, but real, crooked, fig-scented joy. One morning, Neferu knocks on your door. No guards, no ceremony, just him, holding a small wooden box. "For you," he says. Inside, your first razor, restored, polished, mounted on black velvet. "I found it in the royal stores," he says. "I thought it should come home." You run a thumb along the edge, still sharp, still yours, still the same blade that once drew truth from a stranger's jawline. You close the box. And for the first time in years, you feel the weight of it lift, because you know the sharpest things aren't tools, they're moments, and you've had many. One more still waits. You wake before sunrise, not from fear, not from duty, just from stillness. The city sleeps, and so does the court. But your body remembers how the air feels before something ends. Today isn't tragic. It isn't grand. It's not even marked in the scrolls. But it is the day you decide, this will be your last shave. You don't announce it. You don't write it down. You just know. You lay out the razors carefully, every blade that's ever whispered truth across skin. You polish the mirror you've carried for decades. You even wear the linen sash that still faintly smells of lavender and burnt cedar from that day in the Pharaoh's chamber. Hapu stumbles in, yawning. "Why are you dressed like an oracle?" You grin. "Because I have one last prophecy to fulfill." He squints. "Is this about the goat again?" "No, this time it's about legacy." He tilts his head. "Does it involve soup?" You shake your head. "Not unless someone spills it dramatically." You're summoned to the central courtyard. Neferu waits, fully grown now, robes cut sharp, eyes steady, hands clasped like someone who knows every choice will echo for centuries. He smiles when he sees you. "I knew you'd wear that sash." "I knew you'd say that," you reply. He sits on the low bench beside the fountain. You begin. The final shave. His last before coronation. A ritual, yes, but not one from the scrolls. This is your own right. A whisper of transition. The sound of a blade gliding down the cheek of a boy who is no longer just becoming a pharaoh, he is one. You finish in silence. And then, he says, What now? You hand him the razor. You keep it. He hesitates. But it's yours. You shake your head. It never was. It belonged to whoever needed to use it with care. He places it gently into his sash. Stands. Bows to you. You bow back. Just slightly. And leave. Not with fanfare, not with statues, just with peace. You walk through the garden, past the little limestone sculpture of yourself that someone still insists on wreathing with herbs every month. You nod at it. Still not my nose, you whisper. Cuticle bleats from somewhere nearby, munching quietly on a scroll she was definitely not supposed to find. You let her finish it. Hapu joins you later on the stone bench. He hands you a cup of warm date tea. So, he says, you're done? Shaving, yes. He squints. But not existing? You smile. Definitely not. That night, as the city prepares for Neferu's coronation, you sit on your balcony, legs crossed, eyes on the stars. You don't need to see the crown to know it fits. You don't need to be named in the scrolls to know you were part of the shape of things. And as the wind rustles through the palm trees and the torches flicker in soft waves along the palace walls, you breathe deeply, without armor, without weight, just as you are. A barber who once guided kings, a man who once chose silence over spectacle, and someone who, just once, revealed a lie by touching truth with a razor. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease out of tonight's journey together. Take a long breath in and out. The heat of the day has faded. The city hums low with lullaby rhythms, and even the goats have fallen asleep beside the garden wall. You feel your shoulders ease, your heartbeat slow. There's nothing to prove now, no faces to read, no blades to sharpen, only the piece of a job done fully, quietly, with care. So drift, let the story close around you like soft linen. You've been the witness, the mirror, the hands behind a kingdom's calm. Sleep well, O gentle guide of kings. Sleep deep. Sleep true.